Faites appel, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Présent. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur. Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek. Monsieur le député Ozef. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Wall. Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf. Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac. Monsieur le député Madame le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et la puissance de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir le cœur et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qu'il te plut de commettre à leur soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Êtes-vous?
Madame le député Alves.
Sir, Deputy Alves had a medical appointment earlier this morning and has asked to be excused until she can make it into the Assembly.
Excusez.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Mezek,
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Ozov,
Présent.
Madame le Député Poré, Madame le Député Kovac,
Debout. Les États sont constitués. Very well. We continue now with the debate on the proposed government plan. The next amendment to be dealt with is Amendment 24, St Helier Urban Renewal Programme, including Havre de Par, lodged by the Connétable St Helier, and the main responder will be the Minister for the Infrastructure. Connétable, there is an amendment. Are you accepting the amendment?
No, sir.
Very well. I ask the greffier to read your amendment.
Paragraph E. After the words Summary Tables 5.1 and 2 of the report, insert the words, except that in Summary Table 5.2, 1, the 2023 estimate figure showing against reserve for central risk and inflation should be reduced by £1 million, and 2, there should be inserted a new line in the infrastructure section entitled St Helier Urban Renewal Programme, including Havre de Par, and the figure of £1 million inserted in the column for the 2023 estimate for that line.
Connétable.
Thank you, sir. Last week, one of the more pleasant things I got to do was to go to the Arts Centre to see the latest production there of Alice in Wonderland. And members haven't been to it. May I give it a quick plug? It's one of the best things I've seen on the Arts Centre stage in the last couple of decades, and it's on till the 22nd of December. But one of the things I really enjoyed about that evening was it informed me where the phrase "jam tomorrow" comes from. In my ignorance, I had no idea it comes from Alice in Wonderland, from the pen of Lewis Carroll. And jam tomorrow is really the subject of this debate today. In the Common Strategic Policy, my amendment to include the pledge, and I quote, "We will increase our investment in the public realm," was approved. So we are committed as a government to increasing our investment in the public realm. But not yet, because it's jam tomorrow. We're going to start in 2024 if the Council of Ministers' amendment is accepted. Now, I am grateful, of course, that they have found an extra £1 million to spend on the public realm of St Helier, including at Havre de Par. But I am disappointed that they don't think that money is needed next year. And the purpose of my amendment is to make sure that it starts next year. If members have read my report, and I hope they have, they will see that I highlight the enormous investment in the public realm by the private sector. And I take my hat off to firms like Le Mazaret for what they're doing in the Bath Street area, the area described many years ago, at least 10, in the North of Town Master Plan, as needing a partnership approach from government and private sector. Well, private sector have created a fantastic new walk through from the town park into Halkett Place via Moneypenny Lane. The only project achieved by the last government's 4-year term of office was Midvale Road improvements. That's actually phase 1 of the North of Town Master Plan, to which I've already referred. It took them 10 years to do that, and they didn't use their own money. They took money from Jersey Development Company, because the previous funding for the scheme had been spent in St Lawrence by the then minister. I won't say anything else. But anyway, the money was done. Midvale Road is fantastic. Even people who objected at the time have said to me what a wonderful enhancement of the public realm it is, particularly for people who are walking to work and to school. But with nearly 1,000 new homes planned for this part of St Helier, I believe there is no time to waste on getting this money spent, this extra money spent. And that's why I'm pointing in particular, if the department is going to tell us they can't spend the extra money next year, well, let me give them some ideas. And halfway through my report, I refer to Havre de Par, the fact that at long last, some public sector investment has come along in the form of a resurfacing road. Okay, they didn't manage to get the pedestrian crossings done for supply issues, and there's only 2 of them instead of 6, but hey, it's a start. They have resurfaced Havre de Pas. And we, of course, as members will know, particularly the deputies of the area will know, we have a lively, I would probably say resilient, improvement group in Havre de Pas, which meets at the Lido once a month, even in the winter. Imagine the feelings of that group when they created in 2018 a village improvement scheme that was funded by the parish with 140,000. Binder. It just straight onto the button. I have to be really careful. We have to be careful of ring binders.
Sometimes it works for St Helier and sometimes it doesn't.
So in 2018, we carried out a village improvement scheme. We used WSP, the preferred consultants of the department. It wasn't called IHE then. I think it was in one of its previous chameleon guises. But anyway, we did the work, and the consultants came up with a long list of proposals which were well consulted on and put on public display in the Omero Hotel. And on the day we went live with the proposals, the Minister of the day published his opposition to them. Imagine the feelings of the residents group when this happened. But that's history. The group is now meeting. We've dug out the proposals. We've had a recent meeting to look at them. We think they're great. And in case members wonder how you could spend that extra money next year, let me just outline some of those improvements that they're talking about. Simple things like extending the coloured lights the whole length of the promenade. You see, it's practically the only part of Jersey which has these lovely coloured lights that previous ministers in their wisdom thought we didn't need around St Albans Bay. But they've got the Havre de Pas, and they'd like to extend them all the way to the incinerator. We'd like a historic trail in Havre de Pas so that people can walk around and see some of the historic properties and see the plaques on the properties. There's some really important ones in that area. They've already been identified. We just need to put the plaques up. We need benches and planters in Havre de Pas to make it a nicer place to walk around. And the biggest scheme of all, which would easily cost half of this extra £1 million, and which has been worked up by the department already because they came to talk to us about it, is the complete refurbishment of La Colette and South Hill Gardens up on the hill. I mean, anyone who's walked up there knows it's terribly neglected. It could be so wonderful. And the residents want to get involved on a community basis in helping with that project and helping to maintain the gardens at Havre de Pas. And as I say, the department officers, they came to us and we were blown away by their proposals. The only sort of sad note was when they said, well, we can't do them yet because there's no budget. But there is a budget. If the Council of Ministers withdraw their amendment, there's money to spend in Havre de Pas next year, even if we can't, for example, repave New Cut and New Street. Has anyone looked at New Street recently? Has anyone had emails from constituents about the state of the surface with all the trench work and the different coloured tarmacs? It's a disgrace in a town centre to have New Street looking the way it does. And we could pave it all the way up to the National Trust, Victorian House, St Paul's Church. And incidentally, of course, Next, several years ago, invested enormously in their new flagship shop in New Street, and it sits outside a pavement that could be in a war zone. So we could spend the money there, we could spend the money in Havre de Pas, but apparently we can't spend it next year. And all I will say as I wind up for the moment and await the amendment is, Deputy Waugh is a member of St Helier South. He comes to the meetings, very nice of him. But I wonder how he will come to the meeting on the 5th of January if he's voted against an extra £1 million for St Helier, particularly for Havre de Pas next year. I wonder what he will say to the residents. Deputy Binet, the minister, the new minister, and I'm hoping we're going to maintain our good relationship because I haven't had one of those with a minister of that department for some years. But he's been coming to the meetings. How is he going to approach the residents who are already mystified? Because you remember the village improvement scheme I spoke about. Well, his department is now running, I have to look for the description of it, a heart of the village seafront enhancement scheme. Apparently, letters have gone through the doors of Havre de Pau residents. We haven't seen them in the parish hall. The department, off its own back, decided we're going to do that whole process again. And when this was mentioned at the last meeting, there were howls of derision from the people present. Howls of derision. And I'm afraid the minister will receive that same reaction if he goes in on January, having prevented Havre de Pau from accessing this money it needs to improve its area. I maintain the amendment, sir.
Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
There's an amendment to the amendment lodged by the Council of Ministers, and I ask the greffier to read that amendment.
After the words accepted in summary table 5.2, replace the remaining words with the words, the 2023 head of expenditure for infrastructure, rolling vote and regeneration, including St Helier, will include preparatory work for St Helier urban renewal work, including Havre de Pau, with additional funding of 300,000 in 2024 and 350,000 in each of 2025 and 2026 to be included in future government plans.
Well, Chief Minister. Deputy Vinay.
Yeah, so I believe it's me that's going to lead on the amendment to the amendment, if that's okay.
Yes, that's absolutely fine, Deputy, yes.
Yeah, so I can see this is going to be a little bit difficult for me because the Connétable is obviously a very seasoned speaker, and he's also very compelling in the way that he presents things. But I've got to actually read what I've got to say on this one, but I think I'll try and be a little bit more natural when I come to sum up, because I believe I get an opportunity to do that. So
Yes.
So moving on to what I've got to say in a formal sense, the government plan includes a rolling budget of 2 million per annum for improving the public realm, and in order to properly utilise the money, a programme of linked schemes is being developed within the town core, which will deliver public realm and active travel improvements as set out in the St Helier Public Realm and Movement Strategy. Substantial progress has already been made in developing a successful collaborative approach with the parish of St Helier. To ensure joint working and the alignment of priorities, regular discussions are held between officers, in many instances through joint project boards and political briefings. Following completion of the Midvale Road pedestrian improvement and Havre de Pau traffic calming scheme in 2022, the next projects programme to reach construction in 2023 will be Lamott Street, the Western Bus Gate, Minden Place, and improvements to the Eastern Bus Gate. Consultation on the Havre de Pau Phase 2 scheme, called Heart of the Village Seafront Enhancement, has also commenced recently. And I think we have to bear that in mind in relation to what the Constable has said about Havre de Pau, with further consultation and design programme over 2023, moving into procurement and construction in 2024. And I'd ask him to focus on that too. As the Havre de Pau scheme illustrates, public realm schemes are complex to deliver and they have a considerable lead time, and that's extremely important. So on reflection, I certainly hope the Constable would agree that not only do these additional funds need to be targeted on projects that have a potential to add significant value to St Helier's public realm, they also have to be deployed at a time when those charged with delivering them are in a position to do so. Given the public realm team's current commitments and resource limitations, if an additional £1 million were provided for use in 2023, the department would simply not be able to expand its capacity to be able to deliver the additional work by the end of the coming year. Such schemes are inevitably complex, and they require time for planning and engagement with the parish and its parishioners. The amendment, as drafted, takes no account of that. Thus, for very practical reasons, my amendment to the amendment proposes spreading the additional £1 million on public realm over the years 2024, 2025 and 2026. If this is accepted, we'll have time to plan and recruit in such a way as to actually deliver that which we all hope to achieve. I certainly hope members will agree that this approach is the most sensible, and indeed it's the only practical way forward. So on that basis, I urge members to accept the amendment to the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Minister. Is the amendment seconded? Yes. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
Can I raise the defo on Deputy Kovacs, please?
Yes, indeed. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. It's interesting to say that there's money available, but there aren't projects ready to go. I want to add one that the Constable St Helier has mentioned, which is, I'll give you a very specific. It's a neighbourhood improvement area around the Poona Road area, Poona Road, Poona Lane, Pomona Lane, Aquila Road, Great Union Road. We had a meeting with residents, really nice to have, to talk about what needs to be done. One of the obstacles is simply money. There's money available. There's another meeting on the 30th of January where we could actually action some improvements. And there's an idea, action, not words. Rather than delaying for yet another year, with money available, we can start to take these actions. Not only are they actions, but they're inclusive actions with the population in the area. It gives ownership to people in that area to make change to their environment. And if you do that, you get access to what people want, you actually get the change necessary, and you can make more radical change because the people in the area are speaking about the changes that are being made. If you want to come and have a walk around, I'm sure the Constable St Helier will take you as well, you can see that those areas are just purely concrete. And for a minimal input of cash, as a fraction of that £1 million, we could radically improve that area, and we can have it as an example of the way that you regenerate an urban area to make it more livable, more pleasant for the local community, more pleasant for the people working there. Cool it in the summer, make it more pleasant in the winter, and these things need to be done right now. But instead we're saying, well, we'll wait another year because there may not be capacity. There's never capacity. And in a year's time, there will be something else that will take priority instead. And there won't be the capacity then. Because yet again, St Helier is just simply the vehicle for building dense housing, more and more dense housing. We don't know who to. We don't know who it's going to, probably buy to let, not to the local people there. Unaffordable rental accommodation that isn't going to be used. That's okay, because we can give developers breaks to do that. But when it comes to actual regeneration and a project, they are delayed and delayed and delayed. And we'll talk again about this later on. And where are the decisions being made? It's obviously from the Constable St Helier's speech, there's a complete disjoin in what is happening. When the Constable of St Helier is not being consulted, certainly the deputies of St Helier are not being consulted or spoken to. Certainly not. So when we talk to people about how we can improve that area, the only answers we have, we are trying. So I invite the Minister to come on the 30th of January and talk to those residents too and say, well, I'm sorry, I voted against that money being available this year. We can't do it. Give us a reason why. Come and talk to the people it affects directly. And the other option is to withdraw this amendment to the amendment because it's completely unnecessary, and let's actually get on with the job and let's take some action rather than just talking words yet again. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
Hang on a second, we'll have to sum up. Hold on.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment?
No speaking.
Sir,
Sorry,
Okay.
for some reason it's not like you're not.
I'm not lighting up.
Here.
I should be.
Okay, some of the roads he's mentioned.
Sorry, Deputy Benet, it's not your turn yet. There are other people still to speak. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I just need a ruling, sir. It's just occurred to me I have business in the Halfday Park area in Roseville Street. It's on the periphery, but it would benefit, I think, from money spent in the Halfday Park area. It's the Runnymede Court Hotel. So do I participate and am I allowed to vote, sir?
I think that. Sorry, excuse me one moment. There is a slight judgment to be called here, Conitard, because there may be some interest in the improvement, but whether that would be of direct financial benefit to you and your business is rather more moot. So in my view, having declared the position, it's not necessary for you to withdraw.
Thank you very much, sir.
So can I just add that we're also debating when the money will be given, not how much of it, so the improvements are presumably going to be done sooner or later.
That's a very valid point, Deputy. Thank you very much indeed. So does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? No other member wishes to speak? Yes, I think we'll have to reboot the system here. Yes, Deputy Reynolds.
So just a few quick words to support the amendment to the amendment. Deputy Ward has made a free range... Pardon? My problem as well. Deputy Ward has made a free-ranging sort of speech which piles in grievance upon grievance, talking about dense housing, buy-to-let, developers getting tax breaks, town being ignored, and so on. And I have to say, I think most of that is a lot of nonsense. This Council of Ministers is taking seriously the issue of town and the resources in town that need to be applied. Deputy Binet has made very clear in his speech what it is that we are doing. We are doing work very specifically in terms of town improvement schemes, but we're also, in terms of our common strategic policy, making absolutely clear our commitment to reverse previous neglect of the town infrastructure, and in particular green spaces, and so on. It is not jam tomorrow. We are, as Deputy Binet's amendment makes clear, suggesting exactly what money we will spend this year. In 23. That is money that is being committed through this amendment. That is not jam tomorrow. There are lots of other programmes underway in St Helier, as the Infrastructure Minister said. I feel that the Constable's amendment is what happens when you try and elevate one scheme above all others, and then move on to the next scheme that is more important than all others. And we could keep on with that process, and the Constable is indeed coming back with some of those more important than all the other schemes later on today. We are doing plenty of work. We are not delaying. We are starting the work, but recognising that there is other work going on. The Constable asks, what would we say to the residents of Havre de Pau? I would say, we're starting work. We're doing it properly. We're putting in place a sequence of events. We're consulting fully. And then I'd go down the road and I'd say to the residents who are benefiting from all the other schemes that we're doing, that we're not going to cut your work so that we can throw money at Havre de Pau. We're keeping going with that work as well, because we're committed to all those schemes. So I support fully the Infrastructure Minister's approach. We're not going to throw extra money beyond what can actually be spent in the time available for a scheme that we know we cannot actually finish in the time that the Constable would like it finished. But we are absolutely committed to doing the work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. We'll pause for just a minute, if we will, to try and reboot the system so that...
So I would like to raise therefore on Deputy...
Yes, defo can be raised on Deputy Binet. Could somebody press a light on and... Yes. Very well. Yes, Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. It was great to hear from the Minister of Environment the government's apparent stated intention to support improvements in St Helier. It'd be lovely if they could actually tell us about them in St Helier and engage in a proper, meaningful consultation with the people who will be most affected by these changes to actually ask us what we think. I think that there is clearly a sign that something is broken when the Constable of St Helier, who is the directly elected head of the municipal government, essentially, of our capital, who is invited onto the Future Places group, feels the need to come to the Assembly with a series of amendments to fight for St Helier and get funding to make improvements there, because that group is clearly not doing its job if it leaves the elected head of the parish of St Helier so unsatisfied that he feels the need to do this. The Constable referred to the Havre de Pau improvement group. That was an example of the parish putting forward its own funding to consult widely with businesses and residents in the area to come up with a vision for that part of town to seek improvements to be made for it, which was rejected wholesale by the government with very little more than a moment's thought on it at the time. I point that out, sir, because there's a suggestion to a later amendment for the Constable of St Helier that he's wrong to be asking for government funds to be used to fund it, and instead the parish ought to pay for it. Well, what a terrible track record there has been in that previously, when, as ratepayers, when we do put up our own money to come up with these schemes, they then get completely ignored. It's absolutely right that if we're pursuing these kind of schemes, that there needs to be buy-in from all parties, and all parties need to be properly involved in them. So, again, the Environment Minister said this is not jam tomorrow, but it by definition is jam tomorrow, because we're talking about whether we allocate money in 2023 or we provide for a commitment for 2024 or beyond. Perhaps my maths is sketchy, but I think 2024 comes later than 2023. And, sir, in this government plan debate, we are actually only approving the spends for 2023. So put whatever commitment you like in there about 24 and onwards, but that can come to this Assembly next year completely different, and there might be reductions in spendings another way to provide for the extra 350,000 suggested in the amendment for that year. So by definition, it is jam tomorrow. So please don't believe that nonsense. So the other point, I'll make a confession actually to the Constable of St Helier that I did briefly consider supporting the government's amendment, thinking, well, you know, it's the same amount of money overall, but spread out. Perhaps that'll be more easy to manage. And that was before we discovered the line in the government's amendment referring to this being a rolling budget. So there is no harm, in fact, in allocating it for next year. That can be dealt with if there are underspends or if we're not able to get certain things up and running. It can roll on into future years, but it's secured by this vote that it will definitely be there. And so we don't have to worry about losing it or worry about future commitments being watered down. So I'd ask members to reject the government's amendment and provide the funding for 2023, which can be rolled into future years if necessary, so that we can get a move on and start making those improvements to Halfday Park, hopefully in line with the fantastic vision that was put forward with a deep consultation with people in the area, the people whose views actually matter, and not waste money on future consultations and not the proper engagement with the people of St Helier and their representatives, which seems to be the direction they seek to be going in.
Very much, Deputy. This is the season of goodwill and giving, and there have been at least 3 audible pings during the course of the last 5 minutes or so. So in accordance with the spirit of Christmas, hopefully those who were responsible will fess up and will contribute to the Greffiers Fighting Fund. Thank you very much indeed. That was a technical term for judges, by the way. Does any other member
fess up his parliamentary language, sir?
Yes. Conetable St Peter.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I am one of those constables that believe that parishes should contribute to schemes within their own parishes. And of course, they have the ability to do so by raising rates. It is a little tiresome that we hear time and time again St Helier requesting taxpayers' money. And yes, some taxpayers' money should form the contribution to schemes within St Helier. However, St Helier has the enormous benefit, and often it uses the reverse argument, but actually it has the enormous benefit of large areas of offices, retail premises, etc., from which it raises multi-million pounds in rates. And I don't know if any other members have looked at the St Helier parish accounts. Well, there are £18 million in reserve. Of that, 5 million is for specific reserves. 13 million is in fact cash reserves which can be used for any purpose. And if they wish to, if the parish wishes to take or speed up these schemes, then they have the ability to do so. In the last year, the reserves have actually risen by £1.3 million. £1.3 million would easily fund some of the schemes that we're talking about, and therefore I would ask that members accept this amendment, which I think is very fair. I would also like to see the parish actually contributing, because they certainly have the ability to raise the funds. The fact that their reserves rose by £1.3 million proves that fact, and therefore that is what I have to say. And I hope that members will support the amendment to the amendment. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. I get on well with the Constable of St. Peter. I hope it's reciprocated. But that argument simply doesn't make any sense, because whilst St. Helier may or may not have huge reserves, it may or may not have a capacity to get lots of rates in from residential and from commercial units. And that's an argument for maybe a different day and for a later proposition, a later amendment. But there's no suggestion from government here that the parish should be paying for this scheme. This is simply about when the money is drilled down to pay for that scheme. And in passing, I could make the reference that I firmly believe that St. Helier, as the island's capital, which we've been reminded of, often we don't speak of St. Helier as the island's capital. We wait for the media, the international media, who recognise that St. Helier is our capital, to do that for us. And what this debate, therefore, is about is not who pays for it. I think government hasn't got any problem paying for the improvements at Hovde Park, probably largely because that's work that needs to be done by what I used to call the TTS department, not the parish, although no doubt it has to come with some collaboration and cooperation. So what we're simply looking at here is, does the government make the £1 million available straight away, or does it drip feed that money in over a number of years? And I think that it makes sense to give the money straight up. It gives certainty to the project. It gives a strong intent and a strong signal that the work will go ahead, that no shenanigans can happen in later years, because we know that from year to year, monies and pots of money can be changed. I've seen it in the brief time that I spent economic development as a minister, and had to fight for budgets that were otherwise going to be changed. And when it comes to the suggestion of elevating one scheme above the other, well, we do that all the time. I mean, look over the past few years. Departments were encouraged to put in fiscal stimulus bids for capital projects. So you had the likes of Hampton putting requests in to build new visitor facilities there. You had the work that took place at Elizabeth Castle. In this very government plan, we've got the Opera House, which one could consider is a project that's been elevated above all others, and one which I fully support. I wish that could have been done quicker. And although the Opera House is a project that isn't going to be completed even next year, but at the end of the following year, all of the money has been allocated up front for that. And it's much more. It's 11.5 million for one single building to be brought up to scratch. And if the government had said, we want to spread that over 3 years, that they could have done that, but it would have meant that the project, the alarm bells might have gone out that, why are you not giving us that money up front? We're talking about £1 million here, which works out at less than £10 per head of population for the whole island, for a capital which houses a third of the island's population, let alone all of those who come into town most days for work or leisure. And I think it is right that we elevate, the Constable seeks to elevate Hovde Park, if that's what he is doing, because it's such a beautiful area, but it's one that has been neglected. And to say that Hovde Park has potential would be slightly misleading, because you only need to look at historic black and white postcards of what Hovde Park used to be like to know how beautiful it was then. and what it could be put back to with a little bit of imagination, sir. I do have some other thoughts if this amendment is rejected, and we can debate the proposal as the Constable wants. There'll be brief comments. But I simply leave it at that. Let's not get distracted about arguments which I think are divisive between town and country, and recognise that our capital, including Havre-des-Pas, needs investment. It's a relatively small amount of investment, and that money should be given upfront rather than games being played over budgeting, releasing that money drip over a period of years, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. It's quite right that constituency representatives and constables make and have the opportunity of making their case on the floor of this assembly. As Assembly members, we need to balance all of the priorities that we have before us in dealing with, as always, and if any member needed reminded of the importance of public finances being balanced and there being certain resources available, and they need to be allocated in a prioritized in a sequential way. Of course, we don't need to be reminded about that with the carnage that has gone on with the UK and in other governments. So I rise to speak as a former St Helier deputy, as also a president of Environment and Public Services, as a Treasury Minister that put millions into improvements in St Helier. I take with great pride, sir, and I hope the Constable will recall the huge amount of initiatives that have been done in St Helier, all the street widenings that we're seeing around Broad Street. Does the Constable remember Bath Street? Does he remember Charing Cross? Does he remember all of those initiatives that were done at public expense, prioritised to improve the public realm of St Helier? In my term of office, as previously was, we put in for the first time in a government plan, in a corporate strategic plan, St Helier to be rightly putting its place as our capital and as our place. And yes, there had been underfunding, but look, sir, around St Helier of how it looks today, with widened, safer pavements, with a whole myriad of public realm improvements. And it is somewhat disappointing that the Constable never seems to recall the amount and scale of works that have been done in the last 10 to 15 years to improve public realm of St Helier. So I recall when we set up SOJDC, setting up what was then called the Urban Regeneration Steering Group. I think it's now called Future Places. There's one constable that sits on that. It's the Constable of St Helier. He has a seat at the table. He has a seat at the table recognising the important role that he has. But I'm afraid, sir, nothing, and he talks about jam tomorrow. Can I just remind him of the jam that he has already had for the people, quite rightly for the people of St Helier in the past? Lots of it. Marmalade, jam in abundant circumstances. And rightly so. We have proudly improved the public realm of St Helier in ways that even 10, 15 years ago would have been unimaginable. And I take pride in walking around St Helier with the Minister for Infrastructure and the Constable. I said, do you remember we got that done? We got the taxi rank sorted out, we got this and we got that done. I'm involved with a business, not financially, but I know one of the businesses is Havre-des-Pas. I know quite important how Havre-des-Pas is as a site which was originally tourism and is being refreshed and has had some road improvements. And we can do some more, and we will do more. The government is absolutely committed. I've heard, I'm not a member of the group, but I've heard of the inspirational plans that under our Chief Minister's chair with Deputy Ward and the Environment Minister and our Infrastructure Minister, the fantastic opportunities that we can have to improve the public realm around the north of town and other areas. There are priorities, and those priorities needs to be sequenced. The Constable is quite within his rights to bring forward and have this debate. Absolutely correct. But we as states members have an obligation to balance those needs, to put those resources in a sequential, in a proportionate way that allocates resources properly. May I say to the Constable, he's a great speaker. He can charm, that's about debate, so it's a great thing when you've got good speakers and they can charm. But they can also please kindly, and I say to the Constable, please kindly recognise the huge efforts, the huge amounts of public money, not only St Helier money, and as has been wisely pointed out by the Constable of St Peter, who is an Assistant Treasury Minister, also that the parishes have got responsibilities too. The Constable of St Saviour is not here at the moment, but as a St Saviour deputy, we're on his case. We want to see some urban improvements in St Saviour. There are many areas of the island that need areas, Five Oaks and all the rest of it. They feel as though they have been taken second class. We've been called Greater St Helier. We're not Greater St Helier, we're proudly St Saviour, I say, sir. This amendment by the Infrastructure Minister and St Clement and those other parishes, they've got needs too. And we need to listen to them. And I know that St Helier deputies, it's our major capital. We've got more St Helier representatives than any other parish, because we've got a new reformed electoral system. But we're still here to allocate resources in a proportionate, in a sensible, in a sequential manner. And if the Minister for Infrastructure, who I understand has been having great discussions with the Constable of St Saviour, of St Helier, the Constable of St Saviour, the Constable of St Helier has been meeting the Minister for Infrastructure. And I just get the sense that nothing ever is good enough. So I think we need to be reasonable. I think we need to be fair and proportionate to our other responsibilities. And is it appropriate that the Minister comes forward with a pragmatic solution to solve the issues of Havre des Pas, a place I love walking around, love seeing the improvements about, and want to see further improvements? This is an amendment which allows these things to happen in a proportionate, costed, timely approach. And so, sir, I imagine that the deputies of St Helier will want to take the island-wide view, as we all have to do, not just our own constituents. I hope that they will see the importance of other budgets being allocated, the large amounts of money that are being put generally into didn't exist before that budget, by the way, of road improvements, of general improvements. That was a good thing, having money from SOJDC allocated specifically for urban improvements. So I hope that a balanced, fair, proportionate, deliverable amendment, which the amendment, I'm hearing some huffing and puffing again, sir, will be made, and members of the Assembly will send a clear message. They want to see Havre des Pas improved as soon as possible in a sequential, proper way for delivery. So I strongly support the Minister for Infrastructure. He's got a big job on his hands with all of the other tasks that he has to do, loads of other issues. He will prioritise St Helier. Perhaps the Constable, when he speaks, will say the proportion of the amount of time that the Infrastructure Minister has spent with the Constable of St Helier versus some of our other parishes. St Saviour's number 2 as well. How much time has St Saviour had so far yet? Well, St Saviour's coming, but we're going to start making representations for St Saviour too. Let's be fair, let's be proportionate, let's be reasonable. Let's support the Minister for the Infrastructure, who's doing a great job. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott.
Sir, I do support improvement of Havre des Pas because it is actually a very important. Well, it's has much potential as a tourist area, but I was surprised that my fellow deputy of St Bernard, Deputy Tadier, is pushing on this particular project at this particular point. In the Bridging Island Plan, there is a proposal that there should be an improvement plan for St Brellard's Bay, which happens to be a very popular tourist area. And the proposal, and this is only a proposal, any proposal in the island plan just remains a proposal, is that this improvement plan be put in place by December 2023. It's not the first time we've had a proposal to improve St Brellard's Bay. The former island plan, which as people will know, it was approved 10 years before, that had a proposal that there would be a local development plan for St Brellard's Bay. I wasn't actually, as you know, I've not actually been in these States for as long as my fellow Deputy Tadier, but there was a tourist infrastructure fund that could have actually funded quite a number of projects in, say, Havre de Pars and St Brellard's Bay. And that actually was whittled away. And I'm sorry that my fellow deputy might not have fought harder, that might rather have been spent on school trips and sporting trips, might not have actually been put towards the improvement of these areas. But generally, I would like to congratulate the Constable St Helier for actually having advanced Havre de Pars as quickly as he has. I do believe that there's a balance, and I will be supporting the government's amendment.
Thank you very much, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And if you don't mind, and I hope Deputy Tadier won't mind as well, I'd just like to make a correction for the record, sir. The money for the Opera House is not up front, as was suggested by Deputy Tadier. It is in two tranches, sir. 6.27 million next year, 3.23 million the year after. So there isn't £11 million just sitting there waiting to be spent on the Opera House, sir. And it would be wrong that that is the case. Because, moving to the main part of the speech, listening to the Connétable did make me think of a quote I came across a few weeks ago, and it's a quote which has stayed with me, perhaps more so because I'm Economic Development Minister, but in this case we're talking infrastructure. That obviously requires investment. Infrastructure is a vital part of every economy. But so the quote from Thomas Sowell, an American author, is that the first lesson of economics is scarcity, which means there is never enough of anything to fully satisfy all those who want it. The first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics. And so when I listen to the Connétable, that's exactly what I hear. Someone who, quite rightly, as a seasoned politician, has learnt very well to disregard that first and vital, realistic lesson of economics, that there is never enough to go around. And it's not just in the case of money, in this case, with regard to this particular amendment. It's also about actual resources, people, the capacity to do the work. In the comment, which is obviously informed by the Infrastructure Department, the Infrastructure Minister, it is made quite clear that the department does not have the capacity, even if it was to be given £1 million and told, please spend this on these particular St Helier improvements. The department does not have the capacity because the department is already working on an enormous amount of projects for next year. And in St Helier, that includes La Motte Street enhancements, public realm, pedestrianisation and cycling enhancements. It includes the Western Bus Gate, Esplanade, Gloucester Street Junction, Realm and Bus Advantage Sustainable Transport Scheme, Minden Place, all the way from Cattle Street to Bar Street, Fish Market entrance settings, pedestrian crossings, realm improvements, the Eastern Bus Gate, public realm improvements. It also includes work that we're doing via Future Places, sir. That's just in St Helier. And as other people have quite rightly pointed out, there are 11 other parishes as well, sir. But of course, as the island's capital, most of the resources of both the government and the infrastructure department end up focused in St Helier. But there is no way to avoid that very basic reality of life, that there is never enough of everything to go round. And even when the money is there, it's not always the case that the people to make that money deliver are available. And in this case, they are not available. So let's take a step out of fantasy and into reality. And let's see what the government is offering. The government is saying, we are very serious about these improvements. The government is saying, we want to do this, but we want to do it in a way which enables us to do all the other work that has to be done as well. So we are setting a timetable down to show that this work will be delivered beginning this year, planning it this year, because there is also a lead-in. The other part of this is that the Constable doesn't seem to realise that it takes time to plan all of this work. It takes time then to get planning permission for this work, where there are also other scarce resources in the planning department to deal with such planning applications. It then takes time to go out to tender, to get the work, and then obviously the work can actually start. So, sir, let's deal with reality. We have before us a very good position from the government, which is showing that it wants to deliver this work, it's set itself a timetable to deliver this work, and it will deliver this work. It's just not at the timetable that in the fantasy world of the Constable, he thinks can be delivered. It can't. So let's agree with this amendment, because this means that we will get the work done, rather than pretending we'll get the work done if the Constable's amendment succeeds, because it won't be possible. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Sutherland.
Sir, could I just ask Deputy Morell for a point of clarification?
Deputy Morell, are you prepared to give way to a point of clarification?
Yes, sir.
In Deputy Morell's speech, he mentioned that the Opera House funding the total amount wasn't being approved. I've just been looking through the government plan documentation and I may have missed something, but all I could find was reference to the full £11+ million. So I just wondered if the Deputy could point me in the direction to the relevant part of the government plan, which shows that it's being approved on an annual basis, on a
staged basis.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Page 55, the table labelled estates. You'll see about 7 lines down that it's written there. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed. Deputy Sutherland.
You brought me to change your mind.
You've changed your mind. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of lots of political arguments here because I actually quite like the Constable of St Helier and I'd like to think we get on well in the various chats over a cup of coffee that we have. He talked about jam tomorrow and I liked Deputy Ozif's commentary about jam jars. We appear to have, as the Constable of St Peter, plenty of jam jars in the cupboard of St Helier, of the parish of St Helier, about £13 million worth of jam jars in our cupboard. So surely, if the Constable wants to get this work done and he can find the resource to do it, what about him lending £1 million of those jam jars to the infrastructure department and then maybe paying it back to them over those subsequent years when he would like, when the infrastructure minister has said that we will actually carry on and do that work. There's just a thought.
Deputy. Deputy Miller.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to make one comment. I believe I heard the Constable describe parts of St Helier as looking like a war zone. Can I suggest he watches the news from Ukraine to see what a war zone looks like?
Honourable Tarbison Brillard.
Thank you, sir. We suffer from historic road ownership issues, and St Helier particularly has an acute problem with that. Some are owned and managed by the infrastructure department, some by the parish. We have a situation here where Havre de Pas is owned and managed by the infrastructure department. The parish want improvements, and this is the case in most parishes, I have to say so. So taking the longer view, would it not be wise actually to avoid these sort of debates coming here and the infrastructure minister talking to the Constable of St Helier and saying, okay, we'll do the work, but we'll do the work on the basis that you take this area over afterwards. There's absolutely no reason, in my view, that shouldn't take place. And it should take place in other areas too. And should we say, create a situation so that in future the parish assemblies can take the view on whether to spend the money or not out of, as my colleague from St Peter said, out of reserves earlier, and I think it would be a far more satisfactory situation. So I'm reluctant to support the infrastructure department in the amendment that they put forward today, but I would say so that if they achieve the desired result of the residents, let's pass this over to St Helier. Once it's done, there won't be the liabilities for many, many years to come, and I'm sure it's something that would be palatable to ratepayers in that parish. Thank you, sir.
Right, Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Catherine Coates.
Thank you, sir. It's somewhat disturbing to hear deputies who don't represent St Helier, and even some that do, arguing against funds for improvements in St Helier for next year. Having spent time with resident groups, I can tell you what they want most of all, and that is trees. They want to hear birds singing in the trees. In the whole of the Poona Road district, there are, I think, just 2 trees. It is a concrete jungle. I assume most states members don't live in a concrete jungle. If members do not want others to live this way, then I urge them to vote against the Council of Ministers amendment and instead support the amendment brought by the Conotab of St Helier, so that St Helier can be made a better place to live without delay.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Very shortly, I think that I worked a lot, had good working relationship with the constable, and I do want to have improvements for St Helier. I wish we would discuss these amendments on deputy meeting, which was cancelled before the amendments were lodged. As a deputy for St Helier North, I'm wondering why half the PAR has the priority a PAR before St John's Road improvement that residents requesting for 25 years, and we are trying to find the money. Why have the PAR taken a priority upon the St Albans Inner Road, which we working together for several years and it was no improvements? Why have the PAR taken priority upon the Lapukale? And as St Helier Deputy North, I would like to discuss between us first, between all 3 districts, what are the priorities together with our constable, and maybe to present a more coherent priority list to the infrastructure minister and to the future places. By the way, I'm a member of the future places, and I wish constable would bring and discuss it with deputies first and with future places before bringing the amendment to the assembly. And this is the reason I think that our approach, I would like to see improvements around the schools, have the PAR. There is lots of competing priorities, and because we do invest this money, and the scheme around half the PAR would be developed during 2023, because we cannot immediately deliver the scheme. The money allocated to delivery or to development and feasibility for 2023 for half the PAR. I think it's just really pragmatic way forward to support our amendment.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Cox.
Thank you, sir. It's a quick note to point out there's actually a huge amount of development going on the Green Street area with the development of the Limes and the low high-rise at La Collette Flats. And so this area is being neglected, and which is a shame because, I mean, as Deputy Renouf may have come across his natural historic environment team within planning, are very passionate about this area as it does have a lot of history. So there's a lot of development going on there. There's a lot of history going on there. We need to make sure this area stays both historic and fit for purpose for the people who are now going to be living in this area. So the investment is required, and it is required urgently. And this sort of rolling budget may mean this project gets done 2023, 2024, maybe even 2025. We're just looking for some certainty for this area of St Helier to make sure that we don't lose our historic environment in this area through all the modernisation. And we also keep an area that's fit for people to come, visitors to the island, or even just locals enjoying a night out, because there is a lot of bars and restaurants in the area that seem to get forgotten as people move into other areas. But we need to keep this area as vibrant as all other areas of town. Thank you.
Right, Deputy, does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Conotab of Trinity.
Thank you, sir. Just briefly, I find myself on the horns of a dilemma this morning with this one. Whilst I desperately want to support my fellow constable because I realise the importance of improving our capital. We put a lot of people here in multiple occupancy units, and it is so important. And I know he will criticise me because my parishioners have the benefit of a lot of greenery and scenery around them. But I do worry about where is the money coming from. Is it new money? Is there such a thing as new money? Because my parish are currently embarked on the Catalyst work to deliver a village improvement scheme to improve walking and cycling routes in the heart of the parish. And I just need to be assured that if I don't go along with this one, that my parishioners are actually going to suffer in the long term, because speaking with officers from the department, they still can't give me an assurance when the government funding will come forward to continue with the project that the parish have actually started. So I really would like to hear some sort of confidence that this is actually new money and is not going to deprive my parish from a scheme which is already in train. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And I thought I would talk about this one because we're all doing it today, aren't we? I thought I would talk because I could be the representative of St Clement, or I could be the parishioner of St Helier. I live on Lamotte Street, which is subject to IHE works at the moment for their public realm strategy. And I was not consulted. I was not in when they came knocking on doors, but I did get to speak to them. And it is a team that is working as government resources in time. And what I would like to think is that we should be working slowly, methodically, and if we are to fund it more, much as Deputy Morell said, it is a challenge of economics. The report, much of this is based on, the St Helier Public Realm and Movement Strategy, was a consultant-led report by Arup. And I would hate to think we'd be looking back to 2023, thinking that the way we delivered our work was by extending, using contractors and consultants, rather than building up the capabilities of a public realm team that I am more than happy to say need improvement with how they engage with people. But I would like to see us take 2023 to do that work, not requiring that funding, and using 2024, 5 and 6 to deliver. And I certainly don't think that I'm living in a war zone or I'm living in a concrete jungle. But I do think we need care and attention to St Helier.
Deputy Hall.
Thank you, sir. I wish to say I do support St Helier, and I think we do need to make it as attractive as possible for everybody living there. But we haven't got the money to do everything. And I suggest that we support the Minister for the Environment, for the infrastructure, and go along with his plans. He's only got certainly a small team to deliver what he wants to deliver. We can't have everything. We have to wait. And in the meantime, might I suggest that the Council of St Helier does perhaps put some trees in the area that one of the Deputy Curtis has mentioned today. They wouldn't cost very much, and it would make an improvement. And I'm sure that there are enough millions in his coffers to do this, and it would make a difference. So let him come up with some plans, and let's support the government in this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputies. Any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak?
Thank you. So I wanted to go late so I could, I know I'm not summing up on this debate, it's the Minister, but I wanted to be able to comment on some of the hairs that would be set running. I wasn't mistaken. A lot of members didn't listen to Deputy Tadier when he said that this debate is not about the quantum, it's about the timing. It's not about how much money government spends on St Helier, it's about when they spend it. And so many speeches were almost exclusively devoted to talking about the amount of money that was on the table. Some went off on interesting diversions about how much money St Helier may or may not have in its coffers, and I'll come to those in a minute. So there was that regrettable, and it may have been deliberate, I don't know, but the decision by some speakers to focus on St Helier doesn't need this money. This debate is about when St Helier, and in particular when the public realm and Havre de Pau gets investment. The other technique that was clearly displayed by many speakers was divide and conquer. And it often happens in these sort of debates.
let's divide up the parishes. Let's get the deputies and the constables of the other parishes saying how much they need investment and how they're worried about their schemes being affected if we invest in the capital. Well, all I would say to those people, and I've been saying this for as long as I've been in the States Assembly, is that St Helier has always stepped up to take the burden, if you call it that. My predecessor used to. I don't call it the burden. We've always stepped up to take the housing need of the island because it makes sense for people to live in town because they're close to services, they're close to schools, they're close to jobs. And clearly, it's much more sustainable. They don't have to drive to work or drive to school. It protects the coast. It protects the rural communities. In fact, I'm on record as having supported the purchase of Plemont because I wanted to keep the North Coast in its current state. And some of my constituents said to me, what are you doing supporting all this improvement of the countryside and the national park? I said, because I want a beautiful island to visit when I go out of town. And I don't want it pepper-potted with dwellings the way our sister island is, unfortunately. So I think it's a mistake to divide and conquer because St Helier has always stepped up. It was doing it in the Victorian period at the time of Pierre Le Sueur, when half of the island's population lived in town, almost more than half. It's done that, but the quid pro quo has always been that the government will recognise that and work with the parish and put funding into improvements. I'm going to pick up on a few speakers. Not everyone, members will be pleased to know, but I'm going to pick up on a few. Deputy Binet read the official report of the government proposition almost verbatim. Well, he's a new member. I'm sure he won't always do that. But if members turn to the report that accompanies the amendment, they'll see that it is pretty much full of holes. For a start, the 4 projects that are listed, 2 of them are to do with the buses, the Western and the Eastern Bus Gate. Well, I'm sure they're very important for the transport of the island, but they don't really benefit the kind of parts of St Helier we're talking about. Further down, it talks about the King's coronation and the need to create an enduring legacy there, and I agree with that, but not at the expense of people who've been living in Havre de Pars for 20 years, waiting for significant investment for government. The 3rd paragraph says that there's a successful collaborative approach with the parish of St Helier. When I first read that, I thought, is there another parish of St Helier? Have I missed something? I mean, clearly, we do have a Future Places steering group. It was called the Regeneration Steering Group. It was changed to Future Places without asking me what I thought about it. And clearly, I'm hopeful that it will deliver. But the previous groups, and I'm going to come back to Deputy Ozef's speech in a minute, had a pretty disappointing delivery. Deputy Binet is clearly going to respond, so I won't say any more about his comments. Deputy Renouf talked about elevating one scheme over another, and he mentioned the Opera House. Well, the Opera House is receiving a cool £11 million. This is something that's been raised to me by members of the Havre de Pars steering group. They're mystified. They've been in existence for 20 years, wanting serious investment in that area, and they can't see why the states are preferring other schemes. So, yeah, priorities work both ways. Now, the Constable of St Peter, and this was reflected by a couple of other speakers, said that St Helier has lots of money sloshing about in its coffers. He first of all displayed, and I'm surprised at this because he's a constable, but he displayed a certain amount of ignorance about how the rating system works. All the constables will know, and I'm sure most other members will be aware, that parishes can only raise rates to meet their expenditure. They cannot simply say we've got lots of ratepayers so we can get lots of lovely lolly and put it in the bank. They can't do that. The law doesn't allow it. And the parish assembly that meets every year in every parish makes sure that the constable only raises sufficient money to meet its expenditure on crucial services. And they drill down into those services to find out what they are. So the fact that St Helier has more ratepayers is irrelevant because we also have more expenses. And the ratepayers are very good at focusing on which of those expenses need to be met. And every year in St Helier, they raise the problem that some of our expenses in St Helier, some of that money we could be spending in Havre de Pas, is being spent on maintaining parks and gardens and public toilets, which in every other parish are paid for out of taxation. So they say to me, Constable, why aren't you fighting that battle? I say, well, one at a time, please. The £18 million the Constable of St Peter referred to is actually inaccurate. I've been sent a breakdown of the £10 million that we have in reserves at the moment. Some of that is needed, and again, constables will know this, to manage the payment of the bills between when the rate is set and when the rate comes in. Now, in some parishes, that takes longer than others, without looking in any particular direction. But in St Helier, we set our rate in the first week of July. We are paying bills right through from the end of the previous financial year, and we need part of that money in our reserves to make sure we don't go into a deficit. The other money in our rate reserves at the moment, some of that is for the vehicle depreciation. Members will be aware that we run a pretty big fleet of vehicles around the parish. And the other important part of the income is the St Ewolds refurbishment programme. And if members want a breakdown of that money, I can provide it. But in fact, there's a shortfall. And when we get to next year's rates assembly, we'll be managing a deficit until we have our rates meeting and hopefully meet it. But clearly the Constable of St Peter won't be turning up to the Havre de Pas Improvement Group anytime soon. I'm grateful to Deputy Chadier for emphasising that this debate is about timing and not about the quantum of money. And then we went on to Deputy Ozef, and I'm going to be very careful not to play the man here, but I'm going to have to respond to some of the things that Deputy Ozef said, because he put his record for improving St Helier up there for me to comment on. And he kept talking about this whole myriad of improvements that have happened in St Helier. And I was making a list of the ones he talked about, and over a period of 20 years, it is true that we have widened Conway Street pavements. It's been done twice by the Infrastructure Department. In the government term where there was, and I'm grateful to our former Senator Gorst for it, there was a line in the government plan about St Helier. We did achieve the paving of Sand Street around Charing Cross, those improvements there, and there was further money spent in Conway Street. Work has been done in Bath Street. That was done around the time of the creation of the town park. Members will realise that happened a long time ago. But quite a lot of the other work in town has been done by the private sector. And I don't think the government can claim credit for either doing all the work or for doing it in a speedy fashion, because I've been to many, many town centres which have achieved more in the last 5 years than we've achieved in the last 20. So I don't think the rate of progress has been as good as he says. And as he talked, and I remember in one of his speeches, it was the one on the rent-a-room debate, he talked about action, not words. He said it twice. And I was reminded of another literary figure who likes to sort of push the message for the party. And he was clearly doing that. He then moved into the divide and conquer, and he started talking about St Saviour's. And of course, St Saviour deputies and representatives do need to work on their urban improvements. But he finished by talking about enjoying his walks around Havre de Pas. Again, well, if he wants to come to the next meeting, I will welcome him. He finally talked about my informal conversations with the Minister, and it's true that I enjoy a personal relationship with the Minister of Infrastructure. We've shared a few pints together, and I'm not prepared to say anything about that because I just think it's a private matter between him and me. But the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. It will be on what projects, or what successful projects arise out of that relationship. Deputy Morell said that I live in a fantasy world. and there's never enough to satisfy everyone. Again, he's another member that doesn't appreciate that at my back, I have a very disgruntled, disappointed, disenchanted group of residents and businesses who have been meeting in Havre de Pars for at least 20 years and asking for something to be done about the state of their area. They were particularly upset when I think it was Deputy Ozef was in charge of the fiscal stimulus proposals, and money was allocated to almost every parish centre except St Helier, and Havre de Pars got missed out again. Deputy War went under thin ice when he talked about the £13 million in St Helier's coffers. I've advised him that that is 10, and I've advised him what it is for. I look forward to seeing him on the 5th of January. Deputy Miller criticised my use of the word war zone in respect of New Cut. I apologise if that has given offence to her or to anyone else listening. It certainly wasn't my intention. It is a phrase that's been used to me by constituents who are really disappointed by the state of that street. And the other one, of course, and all members will know this if they drive a motor vehicle, is the St Saviour's Ring Road, which is a bumpy ride to anyone with a sore back. There are parts of St Helier which desperately need repaving. Deputy Catherine Curtis talked about the need for trees, and she referred, as did Deputy Ward, to the Poona Road area, and I'm grateful to both of them for coming to our first neighbourhood improvement area meeting recently. And I have to say to another speaker who said St Helier should pay for those trees, well, they are. The budget is in the rates, was in the rates assembly meeting in July, and St Helier is paying for those improvements in all of the 6 neighbourhood improvement areas, and Havre de Pars will be included in that, because a lot of the streets in Havre de Pars are parish administered streets, and of course it's right that the parish picks up the bill for those. But the main road through Havre de Pars and the gardens at the top of the hill are administered by the government, and so it's right that the government should be working on those. Constable of Trinity talked wide about his projects, and I would reply to him that this is not new money. We're not talking about the amount of money, we're talking about the timing of it. So it does seem to me that the main argument is about whether IHE has the resources to carry out the work that this extra money will be providing next year if this amendment is defeated. And I would say to my good friend, the Minister of IHE, that we can work with him to make sure this money is spent on projects. I've already mentioned the improvement of the gardens, which is surely going to cost £250,000 if it's done properly. And the work by his officers is underway. They came and showed us their preparatory work. The other schemes in Havre de Pars, as I say, were worked on when the parish spent money on a properly researched and consulted report that came up with a list of costed improvements. Now, they are ready to go, and they're ready to go next year. So the resources argument, as far as Havre de Pars is concerned, doesn't hold water. It may hold water as far as the town centre goes, I don't know, because I'm not privy to those schemes. But the resources argument for Havre de Pars doesn't hold water. And I can guarantee that if this amendment is defeated, it will be a very happy meeting of the Havre de Pars Improvement Group instead of a rather disgruntled one in January. And we will work with, the parish will work with the states to make sure that that money is put into improvements that everyone will benefit from when they visit Havre de Pars in the coming year. I urge members to reject the amendment.
Thank you, Conor St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. And I will be very brief. As members are aware, sir, that during the last election, I moved from deputy to constable of St Saviour. And Deputy Binney of St Saviour informed me that he would be throwing his hat in the ring for infrastructure minister. And I did at the time wish him the very best of luck. And I meant that most sincerely. And I did say at the time that no matter what you do, it will never be enough. And, that's proven to be true over the years. I'll just run through a few things, if memory serves. The coloured lights after Havre de Pars. White lights were put in, I believe, originally to aid cyclists running along the road there. I mean, coloured lights, I'm sure that could be arranged with the...
Conor, could I interrupt you for a moment? The reception is extremely poor and many members are having difficulty hearing you. I don't know what system you're using, but it's demonstrably less good than other people who are participating remotely. Are you able to improve it in any way at your end?
I'll give it a whack. I'm not sure if it's time or a bit.
No, I'm afraid that was unintelligible. I mean, there is members are simply not able to understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Did you want to try again? Is there a different thing you can, different way you can do it? Can you change the microphone or something like that?
It's an onboard microphone, sir. Shall I maybe stand a little closer? Is that any better?
It is marginally better, but it may be that I think members will also have difficulty following you there. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. Yes. I just want to follow up from what the Constable said, because timing is important. And I think the focus of this debate has been around timing. And as some members have pointed out in regard to the Opera House, the agreement is for the project, but the timing of the spend is over 2 years. And timing is important for two reasons when it comes to infrastructure. One, of course, is the balancing of budgets in year and complying with the Public Finances Law, and allocating funds in a pragmatic and fair way, which is what the Minister has done with his budget requests. And it is fair to say, as the Constable of Trinity asked for, is this new money? No, it's not new money, and therefore an allocation of all this money within 1 year, rather than, as the Minister is proposing, to do his consultation, to start the spend and have a proper managed process. If that isn't allowed to happen, then there will be implications for other spends and other projects within his department. And whilst, as the Constable tells us, the Havdepar working group may be happy on the 5th of January if we reject the Minister's proposal, perhaps the works which have already started elsewhere and those parishioners may not be quite so happy. But not only is it important from a timing perspective, from a budgetary perspective, but timing is also important from a implementation resource perspective. And of course, the department is quite clearly telling us that it requires the implementation of this project, if it is to deliver it fairly, if it is to deliver it to a high professional standard, that resource, which is largely human resource, must be allocated over the time period that the Minister is suggesting, and not just simply tried to be shoehorned into 1 year, because it just won't be possible. I don't want to get into some of the other comments that the Constable made. Are parishes, for example, able, sir, to ask their parishioners to raise their rates to create reserves for various purposes across the parish? Well, sir, let's be clear, they are. Constables don't always like to do that. Some who are forward-thinking do. Others, for various reasons, might not, but they are able to do that. But I'll leave the rating system at that, otherwise I'll lose as many votes as I might possibly gain from this speech. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Felton.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to start my speech by maybe allaying some fears that people that are supporters of the Opera House may have following what the Minister said earlier, because of course, according to the public finances law, when it does come to those major projects, which of course the Opera House is, what we are approving is the proposed total cost from start to finish within this government plan, which is my understanding. So just in case there was anybody that was confused, because I had to look up that page 55 of the government plan myself and then refer to the public finances law to check that. But going on from that, I think that, as Deputy Mezek mentioned, as a party, we've discussed the merits or not of this particular amendment at quite length, because at first it sounds quite sensible. Well, we will ensure that the budget is in the years that we know we can undertake the work. But then you look at the figures and the amount of money, and then also the detail within the government plan itself. Now, there is a little asterisk alongside the rolling fund that the government wishes to place this particular pot of money in. And that asterisk says that if we are approving that funding, we are doing so on an annual basis. So that is quite different to a lot of the capital rolling funds that we see within the government plan. So what has convinced me not to support this amendment is that it vastly reduces the amount of money that we are actually approving for this purpose, and potentially doesn't give enough money to be able to deliver on what we need to, and potentially would deliver only partly completed projects. So I understand that the Constable has done a lot of work with the community, has done a lot of work to ensure that there are projects ready to go. And also, I kind of have the confidence that if this capital budget was not expended in this particular year, that as it is capital expenditure, it could be rolled over in future years. Just to, and this is probably for the main debate, but just in case it sways Deputy Gardner on this particular amendment, the wording of the amendment does say St Helier, including Havre de Par. So I, like Deputy Gardner, have been working with residents on St John's Road and the area, and if indeed the work in Havre de Par area couldn't be completed, then potentially we could be looking at this particular funding to help our constituents as well in that area. So I won't be supporting this amendment. I do encourage ministers to ensure that they are aware of the public finances law and also the project and programme management framework that is utilised by government departments, because it may well help them understand more about the practicalities of managing these particular projects and programmes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir. So the Constable started his opening remarks by talking about Jam Tomorrow and how he's not made much progress in recent years. And Deputy O's have carried on by talking and saying that the Constable had had jam and marmalade. You might have also included treacle, sir, because I do have to share some sympathy with the Constable that getting things done in St Helier in the way of improvement sometimes must be wading through treacle. The Constable's quite right to highlight New Street, and there's a classic example of where a simple road resurfacing scheme could make a huge difference to that part of town. While I'm sympathetic with the Constable, sir, I don't feel that I'm going to be able to support him on this one. I'm going to go with the amendment to the amendment, and I'm going to do that for this reason. It's plans for infrastructure work take time. They needed to be done properly and with some sort of project and time scale in mind. We're very close to 2023 now. I'm not sure whether this money would be used to best effect. And the other reason is, while I agree with the Constable that in recent governments he's had very little help in some areas and things have moved very, very slowly, I do have I think this new infrastructure minister is going to do a good job, and this government are only just bedding in now. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to come up with the goods and deliver for St Helier in the way the Constable wants. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Right, Arbison, John.
Thank you, sir. As we heard from his predecessor, the infrastructure minister has got a very difficult job, but I share Deputy Luce's confidence in him. So we had the explanation from the constable about the difference between parish and public roads, and St Helier are asking for money to be spent on public roads, not on their own parish roads, and I was delighted to hear about the schemes they've got planned within the parish byroads for additional trees. So we heard from my colleague from St Bullard about the potential to transfer the road from the public to the parish. So that's not something that I would support, because I believe that is a major arterial road for the island, and I think we need to retain that in public ownership because it's a key part of our infrastructure. What we don't need to retain in public ownership, sir, are the parks. So I believe the parks could be transferred from the public to the parish. The parish of St Helier prove their ability to maintain their own parks, and with the public's involvement, I believe that that's somewhere where we could be starting. And I think in a phased approach, sir, if we looked at transferring the parks in 2023, I would think that would be a way forward. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Conor Tubbs. Any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Tom Binet to respond.
Thank you, sir. Having listened for the past hour to the many comments, and having listened particularly to the Conitub, I can see that this is going to be a bit difficult for me, because the constable is clearly not just a very eloquent speaker, but an extremely clever speaker to boot. I have to start by saying that I feel particularly disappointed at this point in time, if not a little let down, because the constable casually referred to the fact we've had a couple of pints, it's a private matter, and I won't pass any further comment. Well, I will. I've made a point of meeting the constable every 2 or 3 weeks. We do go and have a beer together in town. We take along our diaries and we discuss public realm at great length. We then stroll off, and I have to say, not in a drunken state. We just have one beer each, and then we spend another 45 minutes to an hour walking around the town, looking at the various things that we want to put straight. In addition to that, I think I've attended almost every one of the Harvard Power monthly meetings. One of them I couldn't attend because I was busy. And furthermore, I referred to the constable referred to my speech, and he said, yes, I read it verbatim. Yes, I did read it verbatim, but I spent a long time on that speech, and I wrote more than half of it myself, and I checked the facts through with the department. And the most upsetting thing that I found was when he referred to the fact that I've made mention of the fact that there was a good relationship developing with the parish of St Helier. And he said, oh, is there another parish of St Helier? Well, that's particularly disappointing, because I've been along to the parish hall, met with the constable formally, and set up meetings with him and his team and my team for once every 3 weeks. So if that's not good communication and a good approach to it, I don't know what is. I hope that members will take me on my word when I say that if we have this extra £1 million this year, we simply won't be able to spend it. It's a very, very small team. They're extremely pressed. And I have committed to spending time this year preparing to spend the £1 million spread over the following 3 years. And that's as much as their capacity will allow them. And I'll say this to the constable because I want to maintain a good relationship. I think it's important for both of us and for the parish. But if I tell him I'm coming back next year to fight for the extra third of £1 million and for the following 2 years, that's exactly what I'll do. And if we say we'll do the job, we'll do it. So I think I'll spare everybody any further drivelling, and I'll just ask people if they would be kind enough to support the amendments to the amendment. Thank you.
Very much, Minister. Is the appel called? Yes, sir. Appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the Council of Ministers' amendment to the Conitub St Helier's amendment, and I ask Greffy to open the voting and members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the amendment has been adopted. 33 votes pour, 15 votes contre, no abstentions.
Those voting contre, Deputy Coles, Feltham, Mesick, Rob Ward, Farnham, Hegerer, Southern, Alves, Catherine Curtis, Porre, Kovac, Tadier, Conatub of St Helier, St Brelard and St Lawrence.
Very well. We now return to a debate on the amendment, the 24th Amendment. Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. Briefly, because I think some of this was said earlier, I don't think this is the end of the world that the amendment's been passed. I think we were debating for a very long time when the money would be drilled down. What I would ask, sir, I'll make two main points. The first is that I think we've now got to move on from what I think was quite a divisive debate about location. So there's a well-known book called The Triumph of the Country, which documents the rivalry between town and country, and I think we need to move past that. And I think those comments were made in the previous debate, sir. This is the time to talk about AVDEPA, and it's right that it's being raised, and it's right that I think we all support now the improvements that can and should be made there. I think St Saviour's time will come. No doubt Deputy Joseph may want to speak again about what needs to be done in St Saviour, but I think there'll be a time to debate that in the future. And of course, there will be work that needs to be continued in the Kennervay and in St Brelade's Bay, and I certainly know that as the only St Brelade deputy who has returned to the Assembly, or previous representative who's been returned to the Assembly as deputy. There'll be another time to discuss that when amendments and propositions come, but that we do have a master plan that is due to be done for our area, but it's right that we're not parochial in this sense. So when we come to this Assembly, we're here to represent the best in the island. What I would ask, sir, is that when the work gets done in AVDEPA and the improvements are made, that we don't make the same mistakes that we might have made in other parts of St Helier. I'll give two tangible examples. One is around Sand Street, and I think Deputy Morell might remember that we did a walk around in town once. And it's only when you start to consider why certain street furniture has been put there and what the counterfactuals are, what could have been put in its place if the money hadn't been spent in that way. And it's quite remarkable, when you go around Sand Street, you realise that there are trees which have metal rings around them, and they have rubberoid at the base, which is very bizarre. You don't see that in most European countries. It's often done in a different way, in a more sensitive way. You have benches there which are, again, in a circle, which seem to be designed possibly to stop people lying on them, but it also means that it's very uncomfortable to sit on those benches. There's the Summerland site where Andium have homes, and I've raised this directly with Andium. I have a fairly good relationship with Andium officers, and I've always found them helpful when I talk to them. But the reason I was attracted and drawn to Summerland was because I every now and again use the EV facilities for the cars. So if I need to hire a car or a van for whatever purpose, I go down there, and maybe whilst I'm waiting, I sit on the benches that are there, or rather should I say I try to sit on the benches, because they're completely uncomfortable. It's like there are benches that have been designed for people not to be able to sit on them. They cut your back. They're so low that even anyone, doesn't matter, you don't have to be as tall as I am, that you can't sit on it for more than a few seconds before you'll become extremely uncomfortable. So I did raise this with Andium. I said, I know it's not your fault necessarily, but I think it's your budget and your team has paid for this. And they look like the kind of benches which would be much more expensive than, say, an ordinary bench that you might see up at Acorn. I went up to Acorn the other day. There's lots of benches out there which probably cost £100. They're solid and they're sturdy, and you could probably sit on them for hours if you wanted to.
without getting too uncomfortable. So I do ask for some common sense and some budget. We've all been talking about, taxpayers' money being used. Can we please have some buy-in in what is ultimately, that's £10 towards that, of course, so we can have a few. I know this isn't going directly to the Avdapar fund. But when we spend that money, can we make sure it's done in a particularly sensitive area, in a sensitive way, not least because Avdapar is a particularly sensitive historic area of the island, of course, not that far away from where the likes of Victor Hugo was living in the middle of the 1800s when he was here. And it is an important area for our tourists to come to still, sir. So those are the points I wanted to get off my chest.
Very much. Joseph.
Very briefly, sir, just to correct something that was said earlier in relation to we're discussing now the allocation of money to Avdapar. The Constable also said that there hadn't been previously allocations made. I would just draw an attention. I'll circulate the report just for the avoidance of doubt. It was said on the record, so it needs to be corrected. In fiscal stimulus, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects, all for St Helier, out of the 55 million, West Park to Cheapside, Phillips Street Shaft, that meant that there would be no more flooding in St Helier, that was 3.2 million, Victoria Avenue 3.6 million, Queens Road water improvements, urban renewal for Cheapside 224,000, and then the Opera House was also there to improve the Opera House and the urban area around there. So there was millions and millions of pounds put in. I'd just like the Constable in his summing up to correct the assertion that was made that there wasn't previously allocations in the general decisions that we're making for allocation for St Helier. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak on the 24th Amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I call upon the... Sorry, was that...
Oh, sorry, sir. I should have put it in the chat. So I'm right to speak very briefly, sir.
Yes.
I just wanted to reassure the Conetab that I'm looking forward to working with them over the coming years and to making sure that we get that money and that it's well spent. So thank you.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Just very briefly, I turned it off when I stood up. This is how I usually silence myself. I just wanted to echo the words of Deputy Tadje, and when looking at some of the public realm, he's absolutely right. At his request, we went on the walk around St Helier, and we were looking at these public realm items. And I can only ask the infrastructure department, particularly, because I imagine most of the responsibility lies there, to really rethink the furniture that they're putting around St Helier. It may be there in their minds, like you say, it's practical to stop people sleeping on things like that, but that's not what is needed. And I mean, there's one piece, which to be fair is part of a private development, so which is it's literally a kind of window ledge where they've put steel spikes coming out of it to stop people in any way sitting on it. It's absolutely appalling. But whatever we do in terms of regeneration of St Helier over the coming years, and there will be lots, this government is committed to it. I completely agree with Deputy Tadje. We need to rethink the way of the catalogues that we're buying from need to be replaced by new catalogues, is what I'd say. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Scott.
Sir, I just want to say that what I heard from Deputy Tadje and from Deputy Morell was almost like a good argument for actually having the parishes in control of these sort of development projects. But I will support the amendment, but I am actually quite, I generally would like to see the parishes, whether or not they're funding these things, actually designing them.
Any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon the Conetab and Helier to respond.
Thank you, sir. The debate, I think, has been very useful in a number of ways. First of all, it has flushed out a number of views about St Helier's position. And I don't know whether all of these are seriously held or, in fact, we're just debating tactics. If they are seriously held, then I probably need to remind myself that almost half of the Assembly is new, and maybe they don't have the scars that I have. to show for trying to get a fair deal for St Helier for over 21 years now. So obviously I may have to do more to remind members that, for example, in the year 2000, when some members were probably only a twinkle in their parents' eye, a few of them anyway, the government commissioned a landmark report called Machinery of Government and the Relationship between the states and the parishes. A really important landmark document which recognised that the capital does need to get some recognition from government because it is going to be the place, and that was 22 years ago, it was recognised then that it would be the place which would be taking the majority of new development for the sake of our island. I think there's also another issue which we'll probably be reflecting on in some of my other amendments, that the relationship between St Helier and the other parishes is sometimes a little fraught. You know, I was disappointed by the Constable of St Peter's remarks in particular. Again, that may have been debating tactics. He may not really think like that about this parish, but I think it's really important that the whole island learns to love St Helier. St Havre de Pau, for example, is there for the whole island to enjoy. It's not just for the people who live in those streets beyond the beach. And we have but one capital, and we're very lucky we have but one capital because jurisdictions with more than one capital really struggle when it comes to the economy of those towns. So Deputy Joseph wanted to correct the record about the fiscal stimulus money, and it is true that some good work was done at Cheapside as part of that, and I thank him for that. But gosh, it does need a bit more spent on it, doesn't it? I mean, Cheapside really does need some more investment, and it's a state's main road. Does he want me to raise, or does one of the other constables want me to raise a special fund to improve Cheapside? How are ratepayers going to react if I go to the next rates assembly and say, government doesn't regard Cheapside as a priority, therefore you ratepayers are going to spend money on this government road and the surrounding areas to make it better. It was also quite interesting that the other schemes he mentioned when he talked about the millions being spent on St Helier were entirely drainage schemes. The Phillip Street shaft, for example, I mean, what's that got to do with the debate we're having today? Anyway, I was delighted to hear from Deputy Binet and to know that in spite of the fact that I did bring this amendment to the government plan, I was mandated to do it by the people who voted for me. I'm pleased and reassured to know that we're still going to be having informal glasses of beer together. That's good to hear. And Deputy Morell, I'm grateful for his intervention, although I don't want to be accused of knocking Deputy Binet's department, but some of the street furniture that appears in my parish, which I normally don't know about, and it just appears, is pretty awful, and it's always different from the last thing that appeared. One of the worst things that appeared was that dreadful shelter in front of the wonderful new IFC building. I think it is a wonderful building. I think the granite approach to it is a fantastic piece of public realm. And Deputy Binet's predecessor decided it would be a smart idea to put a really ugly perspex-covered cycle shelter right in front of the IFC. What a disaster that is. And I actually wrote to the minister and his chief officer and said, could you please take it away? And they said, no, it's just a trial. Well, it's still there. So I agree with Deputy Morell. We do need to get it right. And actually, I've been pushing for an urban task force for some years. I almost had the previous chief minister ready to agree that the Regeneration Steering Group needed an urban task force to really focus on things like street furniture, town trees, walking and cycling routes. And we were almost there, and the election came along. And the Future Places team don't believe that we need an urban task force. Well, that's in my manifesto, and I was voted with that pledge that I would form an urban task force. So if Future Places doesn't deliver in the next 6 months, I will come back to the Assembly with a proposal to set up an urban task force, which will be able to deliver in a joined-up way. And finally, sir, genuine thanks to the Council of Ministers for accepting my amendment. to get a little more money spent on our capital. Thank you, sir. I maintain the amendment as amended.
Sir, point of clarification.
Do you give way for a point of clarification, can I say?
No, sir, I finished my speech. Thank you, sir.
Very well.
It was an
Do you
amusing
call for the
one.
appel?
Yes, please, sir.
Appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. And I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce that the amendment has been adopted. 49 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. Very well. The next item of public business is amendment number 23, removing the upper earnings caps lodged by Deputy Mezek, and the main responder will be the Minister for Treasury and Resources. And I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Paragraph I. After paragraph H, insert a new paragraph I. I. To agree that the upper earnings limit, as defined within the Social Security Jersey Law 1974, should be removed, abolishing the upper earnings limit cap on Social Security contributions and on long-term care contributions, increasing the estimated closing balance of the relevant funds by 7 million and 6.5 million respectively by the end of 2023, and redesignate the existing paragraph I as paragraph J.
Sir, sorry, before the debate opens, I have to declare an interest, as this would have a direct impact upon my household, and I shall withdraw from the debate.
Very much indeed. I should perhaps, in connection with members, in connection that if a member of the States has, or whose spouse or civil partner or cohabitee has an interest in the subject matter of the proposition, must, if it's a direct financial interest, declare and withdraw from the chamber.
I'll also be withdrawing, sir.
Very much indeed. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to those members for declaring those interests and making that clear. So this is an amendment to scrap the cap. Not just a catchy slogan, but a good policy to provide much needed revenue for our public services and to improve our tax system to make it more fair and progressive. So the definition of a regressive tax is a tax where the tax rate reduces as the taxable base increases. That is the case for Social Security contributions and for the long-term care tax, where the richer you are, the less you pay. So I regard that as immoral, but I also regard it as unhelpful. It makes no sense to me to provide for tax exemptions for the people who can most afford to pay it, to not benefit from that revenue going into those funds for the benefit of the whole of society. It stands directly at odds with the broader principles of progressive taxation and how we're meant to be seeking to fund our public services by people contributing according to their ability to pay so that everybody can receive according to their need for those public services. And so if members thought we experienced a bit of Groundhog Day yesterday, let me warn them, if this amendment is not accepted, they can expect to experience it in future years, because this point of contention that we have this unfairness built into our tax system is one which will not go away until it is dealt with, and we'll bring the amendment time and time again if we have to, because we will not ever stand for a tax system that provides exemptions for those who need them the least, whilst we don't currently fund an extent of public services for those who need them in our society. So the effect of having this regressive and unfair cap on social security contributions and the long-term care tax means that we are potentially losing out on an extra £7 million annually into the Social Security Fund and an extra £6.5 million into the long-term care fund. Now, we have had debates already in this government plan, and I'm sure we'll have many more debates in the future about all of those things that we'd like to do, but we just don't have the money to do them. We had a debate yesterday about providing more affordable access to primary healthcare for people with multi-morbidities, something that would cost money to deliver if we chose to, but which this Assembly voted against, even though I'm sure that there are members who did vote against who in principle would have liked to have seen that extra support be provided. So we know that there is great difficulty in our care services at the moment, great difficulty with being able to manage the quality and amount of care that is provided to those in our community and to fund the staffing levels that are required to deliver that and to keep people in that service when they've been working there but then struggle to make ends meet because their own salaries are not enough to sustain a decent living on. So, sir, in this amendment, I'm asking members to agree that these caps, what's officially called the upper earnings limit, should no longer exist. So the upper earnings limit until a few years ago was set at an amount in the region of £170,000 a year, where above that you paid no extra long-term care tax and your employer paid no extra social security contributions for you. At the start of the previous term of office, the then Council of Ministers got together and made a decision that that cap would be significantly raised, and they raised it to £250,000. That wasn't the only option that they looked at. They did look at raising it to £500,000, but opted for the lower figure instead. And since then, it's gone up by average earnings in those years since. So it now stands at a level of £276,864. If you're earning that amount of money, you are doing really well by Jersey standards, extremely well. And that is an individual salary. That's not households. That's not household. That's or married couple or civil partnership. That is as an individual earning £277,000 a year. At the moment, through the long-term care tax, that's charged at 1.5% on the same basis as your income tax is, but in contrast to income tax, it's capped at that amount, and so you pay not a penny of it above that. If this amendment were accepted, you would pay the full rate of long-term care tax on the whole of your income, like the rest of us. You'd be treated no differently in that respect. Instead, that difference would be eliminated and you would be treated exactly like everybody else, paying that same tax rate on your whole income. So at the moment, the effect of the cap on the long-term care tax means that if you are earning just above £1 million a year, your effective rate of long-term care tax would be 1/4 of the rate that your cleaner or your gardener would pay, or if you employed staff, what I'm sure pretty much nearly all of them would be paying. You'd be paying 1/4 of the effective rate. That is not fair. So for the social security contributions, let's be absolutely clear on what the effect of the upper earnings cap being removed is there. That actually would not see those higher earners themselves paying that extra 2.5% above that amount. It would be their employer paying it for them. If they're self-employed, of course, they count as their own employer, and so they would pay it above that amount. But that is still the amount, £277,000 a year. There are not many of those people in Jersey. There are not many small or medium-sized businesses that are employing people on that salary. But I would have to say, sir, that if you are employing people on that amount, or if you are self-employed and you're earning that amount, it strikes me as simply fair that the social security contributions are the cost of employing somebody on that amount. It is the case that you expect to pay social security contributions for all of your employees. Why shouldn't it be the case for those who you might employ on an extremely high salary by Jersey's standards? And sir, the effect of lifting these caps would be that into our social security fund, we would receive an extra £7 million a year, and into the long-term care fund, we would receive £6.5 million a year. We're told in the comments lodged by the government in opposition to this that now's not the right time to do this because there is this review into the Social Security Fund currently ongoing. I would wager that that review is unlikely to conclude that an extra £7 million a year extra into that fund would have a negative effect on it. It strikes me as ludicrous, the idea that more money going into it would cause problems for it. What it would certainly do is either make the fund more sustainable further into the future, or it would enable the fund to be more generous in what it pays for the services that we rely on. And likewise with the long-term care fund, which we know is actually, at its inception, the proposal was that the long-term care tax, which started at 1%, would eventually go up to 3%. We're currently on 1.5%. If that's still the case, that to pay for long-term care in years to come, our contributions into it need to increase. By putting an extra £6.5 million into it, by charging everybody the same tax rate, you delay the point at which you would need to ask those islanders on average salaries or lower than average salaries to pay extra tax for it, by making it by being able to delay that point, something which I hope members would be keen to avoid, particularly with the cost of living crisis that we face. So as I come to a close on my opening remarks on this, this really, whatever economic arguments you might want to apply to this, there is also at the heart of this the moral point, which is that those on the highest incomes in Jersey should not have exceptions built into the system for them to prevent them from paying under the same rules as the rest of us. Are we one community or are we not? Do we not all deserve to be treated the same under our tax rules and pay based on what we can afford and not have carve-outs into the system for those who need them the least? There is no economic benefit to that, and we have an opportunity to change that, and so I make the amendment, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Is the amendment seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Miller.
Thank you, sir. I, as Deputy Mezek indicated, I oppose this amendment and I ask members to reject it. This may seem like an odd position for me to take. As Deputy Mezek suggested, what is the prejudice to the fund by increasing contributions into them? Why not take more money into the funds? And there are two main reasons. Firstly, because we do not need the funds now, and this is simply taxing high-earning businesses and people for no other reason than the fact that they are high-earning. This is driven purely by a point of political principle. Deputy Mezek has also suggested that we can use the increased contributions to meet other costs. This is incorrect for the reason that both the Social Security Fund and the Long-Term Care Fund are hypothecated funds, and we can only use those contributions for the purposes of paying the Social Security pensions and benefits and long-term care benefits. I accept that the position with Social Security is slightly more complex than long-term care, but that is the broad general position. Would the Assembly be happy to vote to take money from either of those funds to support the general reserve or to meet other costs, as opposed to reserving them for the purposes for which they were originally intended. On the basis of our discussion yesterday about the HIF, that seems unlikely. This amendment seeks to remove the upper earnings limit from both the Social Security scheme and the long-term care scheme. However, if the intention is to ask higher earners to pay more, it does not work as effectively as Deputy Mezek suggests. If we look at the Social Security scheme, the upper earnings limit does not apply to high-earning employees. Social Security contributions paid by all employees are capped at just over £60,000 a year. This means that any employee pays no more than £3,643,000 per year in contributions, whatever their total wages. This amendment does nothing to address that issue. Contributions at the upper earnings limit are only paid by businesses, and this relates to both employers and self-employed individuals. Removing this cap now would increase the tax burden on businesses at a difficult economic time. An employer paying contributions at the maximum amount will be paying £9,350 in 2023. Jersey Finance, who have written to oppose this amendment, and they've written to Deputy Mezek with their concerns, suggest that amounts more like £12,000. A self-employed person who pays both the employee and employee elements will be paying just shy of £13,000 a year. That's in addition to any taxes they may pay. Many of the businesses with high-earning employees and the employees themselves are internationally mobile, and unlimited contributions could result in the loss of business from Jersey. Why would a business ask an employee to come to Jersey if it's cheaper to locate them in another jurisdiction? Would this unlimited contribution attract the kind of entrepreneurship that we want and need in the island? The overall loss of government revenue in this situation could be significant. Income tax, social security and GST all moving to a different jurisdiction, quite aside from the wider economic benefits that the business and that employee may bring to the island. As Deputy Mezek has said, contributions at this level have already increased significantly since 2020. The upper earnings limit was increased from £176,000 to £276,000 a year, and the contribution rate at this level was increased from 2% to 2.5%. I understand that a proposition was brought to the States to increase the long-term care contribution to 2%, but the States Assembly only increased a contribution of 1.5%. The changes to Social Security doubled the maximum Social Security contribution paid at this level. That extra income was used to support the expansion of parental benefits. Deputy Mezek has not suggested any specific proposal to use any additional income raised under his proposal. I find it difficult to condone the use of the powers of this Assembly to raise money from local businesses when there is no need for government to collect this additional revenue for a specific identified purpose. There is no justification or need to increase or remove the upper earnings limit now. Deputy Mezek's forecast income suggests that we would raise an extra £7 million in Social Security contributions and £6.5 million from long-term care contributions. Those monies, the £7 million from Social Security, would come in respect of 600 employed and self-employed people. The long-term care contributions will come from 920 individuals, who are also part, I expect, of the 600 who will be paying additional Social Security. Do we really think it's fair to put 600 people to that additional burden just because they happen to be doing well out of a working age population of some 50,000 people? I think fairness has to cut both ways. In any event, the Social Security Fund is in a robust state. It's very healthy. The Social Security Reserve Fund has a balance of some £2 billion. An actuarial review is currently underway, and I'll be able to publish the report of the actuaries in Q2 of 2023 in respect of both funds. That review will tell us about the long-term health of the funds and what we need to do to maintain them at a level that's sufficient to meet our obligations. Any decision to change contribution rates or limits, and this is also the advice of the Fiscal Policy Panel, should only be taken after the actual reviews have been obtained in the second quarter of 2023. In his report, the Deputy has also suggested that the Government's response to the cost of living crisis has included direct payments from the Social Security Fund. That's not correct. All of the direct payments made to support islanders at this difficult time have been funded from the Central Consolidated Fund. We have not paid more out of the fund to address the cost of living crisis. As I've also explained, a review of our benefits landscape, and in particular the Long-Term Care Fund and its operation, is one of my priorities for next year. That will consider in particular how that impacts the domiciliary care market, where there are known tensions, and the scheme has evolved as that industry has evolved, and it is now really in need of review to see how it operates. Those reviews may well identify areas where we would like to expand the scope or value of certain benefits, or amend the criteria that more people qualify for them. For example, increasing the Pension Plus scheme for low-income pensioners. It may be that we already have the funds to do that, but without the actual report, we cannot make any reasoned decisions about benefits and how we can sustain them in the long term. We also need to consider carefully, when we have the actual review, the impact on the funds of our ageing population, and that may require contributions to be increased. It may very well do that, but we have to do it on an informed basis with actuarial advice, and any discussion about that is premature. This amendment is, I suggest, poorly timed and achieves little real purpose other than satisfying a demand and desire that some businesses and individuals pay more tax as nothing more than a matter of political principle. I urge members to reject the amendment. Thanks, sir.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. This amendment is virtually identical to the 12th amendment to the previous government plan, brought 1 year ago by the same proposer, which was titled Social Security Caps. In its current iteration, it has been titled Removing the Upper Earnings Caps, but of course it is to all intents and purposes an identical proposition. During that debate, I mentioned that it was unfortunate that the amendment had not been divided into two parts, and Senator Pallett concurred when he said it would have been good, I think, to potentially split the amendment. It is important that all members understand that they are being asked to support two totally different things in this amendment, one being a contribution and one being a tax. If one has sympathy for either part, that does not necessarily mean that they should vote for the whole. We must also consider the issue of competitiveness. It is perfectly possible that some high-earning individuals may relocate to Guernsey or to the Isle of Man, and if this were to be the case, we would lose all their contributions and tax, not just the excess, which would be imposed on them if this amendment is passed. We may also lose some mobile businesses which can relocate to different jurisdictions with ease. And we must remember that the upper earnings limit goes up each year in line with the increase in average earnings anyway. There have been some concerns about the viability of the long-term care scheme. This, in part, was due to the actuarial review which was presented to the states in October of 2018. That document stated that the fund balance is estimated to reduce to around 3 months' worth of fund expenditure by 2023 and to nil by 2027. This, of course, is clearly not the case today. There is a healthy balance in the fund of around £45 million, which is expected to rise to £82 million by the end of this government plan in 2026. So there is no desperate need for any immediate action to increase the revenue to the fund. The current long-term care tax is in itself fair. People who are on the standard rate of tax pay 1.5% long-term care tax, whereas the rest pay only 0.75%. It seems reasonable for us to await next year's actuarial review of of the long-term care scheme before we consider taking such drastic action as is proposed here today? Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Now, I think Deputy Mezek has raised a very valid point. It's been something that has been mentioned over previous years about the social security contributions cap. Now, what we are looking at here is high earners. They have a large net income in terms of the mandatory contributions that they do provide to the state. And it also allows them the ability to have a procurement of savings, but also the ability to invest and to consume as well. Now, all we are looking to do is we're looking to actually increase the fund balance, to maintain the fund balance. And, of course, when we are looking at the projections, it was mentioned in the July report of the Fiscal Policy Panel that the fund itself will be exhausted potentially by 2067. Now, that is on the basis that we have a net inward migration of 325 people. And also, sir, we have an ageing population. More and more people will need transfer payments. And there will be a more finite pool of people. And because, of course, sir, Jersey is a jurisdiction, we are very much reliant upon the economically active to contribute. Social security, personal income taxation, sir. And also, look at consumption taxes such as GST. And we don't really have a broad tax base in terms of revenue. But what we're really speaking about here is funding the needs of islanders. And there is going to be a greater need year on year. So absolutely, I will be supporting Deputy Mezek. I think it absolutely is essential that we have something now in place. Because if we do not see this additional income, it means problems will arise, and they will arise much sooner. Because there is 13.5 million of additional income we are speaking about here, sir. I think that's really important to mention. How much income could potentially be lost over the next 10 years if this doesn't happen? And what about in 20 years or 30 years? And it'll be for future state assemblies that will have to resolve these problems. For us, yes, we are very much aware that the Social Security Fund is in a disposition. But it's for 4 years that we are having to deal with this current situation. And it'll be for a new assembly to inherit the same problem. And it'll just be passed down from assembly to assembly to assembly. But what we do need to see is some form of continuity. And actually by aiming to increase the fund balance and also to ensure that actually our approach is that we are targeting transfer payments. It's not going to be too broad. We have to be more specific, potentially, in terms of who is actually entitled to transfer payments. But the concern I have is if this is not approved, could we be seeing potential projections actually end up where problems end up coming sooner rather than later? And how do we then react to that? Because that is also another scenario as well. Things might happen before 2067. And that's what the Council of Ministers have to recognise. Because if they don't, then we seriously will have some serious problems. And as I say, sir, this is something that is a regressive form of taxation. Those who have higher incomes have a higher net income compared to those who are part of the lower deciles, the middleman and the middlewoman. And for them, they need to be protected too. And I don't think we've been doing a good enough job over consecutive assemblies. I think, in fact, actually it's got worse. And unfortunately, sir, there seems to be a majority in this assembly who want to maintain that. And that is very much regrettable. However, sir, you have to be true to yourself. And for me, I will be supporting Deputy Mezek, and I hope other members will join me in supporting Deputy Mezek. So thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. I think along similar lines to Deputy Andrews, and I think the expression that comes to mind when we're faced with the argument from the Social Security Minister that we don't need the money at the moment in the fund, is make hay whilst the sun shines. You don't need to wait until you're desperate for a fund to be being depleted in order to find a way to top that up. I mean, we've learned that over years from the strategic reserve. You put money into it when you don't necessarily need it for the times when you do need it, because if you need to start scrabbling around for money, you've already got the beginnings of a problem and possibly a crisis by the time you get to that point. I really just wanted to make, I suppose, maybe 1 or 2 points, because I think that the opening speech by Deputy Mezek was very clear and compelling, that this isn't just a revenue-raising exercise. It does do that. And if we've learnt one thing in this Assembly, we're faced with the question of, well, you want to spend the money, but where's it actually coming from? Albeit that this will go into a designated fund for designated purposes. That's not contested. But it's also one about basic fairness. And this is a very modest amendment, because what it's asking to do is scrap the cap. But of course, the contributions still are not the same. The rich still get a preferential rate. It's 2% rather than 6.5%. And if we're looking at supporting businesses, let's also look at what we're often told, quite correctly, are the backbone of the economy, which is small and medium businesses. So if a particular business, let's just choose a figure. Let's say a particular business has a £1 million payroll bill for all of its staff, but all of those staff happen to be employed on more modest earnings, so they're lower earners who might be getting 30, 40, 50,000 pounds each a year. They'll pay the full whack of contributions. So they have to pay 6.5% on the whole of that £1 million bill. Whereas if you have a particularly different business model, maybe one that's more lucrative, in fact, and needs fewer employees, but at a much higher rate. So if you have the same £1 million tax payroll bill, or it could be 10 million or 100 million, the proportion of social securities you'll be liable on that will be much lower. Let's say theoretically you only had 2 employees, each getting £500,000 each. The amount that they will have to pay, even after we've scrapped the cap, will still be a lot less than it would be for that small and medium business, which is keeping many more people in work. And I think for me, that's another point of the added fairness of this argument. Why is it that a business with exactly the same payroll outgoings, one business has to pay a much higher rate than another business which might have exactly the same payroll demands, but paying much lower rates of social security? I think that's what really puts it in perspective for me. And this is why I think it's the right policy to pursue, and why I think we should grasp the nettle today rather than waiting for a time where we do need to desperately get funds into the Social Security Fund in the future.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. So a number of members have spoken about I think the previous speaker, the sun is shining. Other members have said in previous debates on such matters that if it quacks and it waddles, it's a duck. And of course, as the Social Security Minister has said, this is not a tax in terms of social security. The long-term care scheme, which was brought in by me after the Social Security Minister then gave the challenge to the Treasury to collect the long-term care charge, was carefully brought in as a charge, but it's based upon the Social Security. It's based upon these income tax arrangements, because they have an income tax-free limit. So it was the courageous and long-sighted decisions of a former Senator, Chief Minister, Treasury Minister Le Sueur, as he's President of the Social Security Committee, who forecast the ageing society, consulted and put forward increases into the Social Security employer and employee rates that ensured that we have what is effectively, as I'm told, a world-class funded Social Security fund because of that prudent approach to ensure that we have the necessary resources to pay for pensions and the other contributory benefits that arise from this fund. So this is not a tax. It doesn't quack or waddle like a tax. It's a contributory benefit. What concerns me, sir, in relation to this proposition is that unless I'm, and I look across to the Treasury Minister for guidance, that if the Assembly passes this, this would be something that would come in into 2023. In other words, if I could just give way just for the avoidance of doubt, because I don't think this is absolutely clear. If I just want to make sure of when this would actually come into effect, because the budget allocation that we're debating, sir, is for extra revenue in 2023. So that must mean that the contributory benefits would come in, would need to be made. I'll give way to the...
So point of I'm sorry, I'm not sure that you can invite questions from other members.
I want to...
Inviting people to ask you to give way.
Well, I'll ask the chair, sir, then.
Well, I beg your pardon, Deputy, if I could just finish. I don't think it's a legitimate use of standing orders effectively to invite in a speech someone to ask you to give way, because we could end up in those circumstances with exchanges between everybody on the same side, asking to very much after you, no after you, no after you, no after you, and we'd end up in quite a mess. So I think there has to be a legitimate request for clarification originating from the person seeking clarification and not from otherwise. So the answer is, I will not permit any point of clarification on this particular issue at this particular moment. Deputy Gorst is able to speak. He hasn't yet spoken.
Okay, so well, there's no law officers here to ask to complete clarification. So that's what I was trying to do, sir. Maybe there's a law officer that could attend in order for me to clarify exactly my understanding of what the amendment actually means. My understanding of this amendment,
Sorry, I'll interrupt you again. The Attorney General is online. If you wish to make a question of the Attorney, you're able to ask it.
Oh, that's helpful, sir, because I can't see him. So I just would like to clarify, sir, if I may, politely, and I take your ruling completely, sir. I just want to make sure that members are quite clear about the implications of the debate. The amendment that is before members puts allocations in for 2023. So am I correct in assuming that the legal effect of this is that the contribution rates would need to go up in 2023?
That's a question for the Attorney.
Well, out with anybody else trying to help me with that. I would be grateful for the clarification of that, because it's a really quite important point that I was coming to my speech, sir.
Mr. Attorney, are you able to assist?
Sir, insofar as it's a question of law, I'll do my best, but I'll need some time to think about it. It may be a question of practice, which Treasury officials may be better placed to answer, and it may be that Treasury officials may be listening in and may be able to assist the minister, the Treasury Minister, if and when he speaks. But obviously, I will do my best to consider it.
If you pause for a second, Mr. Attorney, there are others wishing to reach, and let's see where we get to. Yes.
Yes, may I ask a question of the Attorney General, which hopefully his answer will be helpful. As the mover of the amendment knows from the drafting of the amendment, page 2, paragraph I will need to be changed with this amendment, should members vote for it, and it says at the end, respectively by the end of 2023. I wonder whether the Attorney General could help us then as a matter of law. If the amendment says by the end of 2023, that would mean that the law had to be changed and revenue had to be collected during 2023 in order to meet that by the end of 2023.
Sir, I will consider that, but I'll just need a little bit of time.
Mr. Attorney, I think I can assist you, because the construction of what the proposition means is a matter for the chair rather than a matter of strict law. No, not at all. It's a matter for the chair, and it does seem to me to be fairly clear on its surface that this must be achieved so that it can be given effect by the end of 2023. and whatever has to flow in order to do that, that is what passing this amendment will require.
I'm extreme.
So it's a point of order. So I know you've been very generous in this exchange. This seems that it's bordering very close to an abusive process. We've got essentially, I think, the Attorney General being dragged into what's effectively a political question about consequences. And I know it's grey, sir, and I also noticed the clock's been stopped, which is probably correct. But I think these are two ministers we're dealing with here, sir, who work together closely, and it seems to me that the correct process should have been to wait for Senator Gorse to speak.
I understand the point, Deputy. I mean, it's my job, obviously, to ensure, as far as I'm able, in an imperfect way, I'm sure, that standing orders are met, which is why I didn't agree to an invitation for a point of clarification, nor, having heard the question, that it seemed to me to be a matter for the Attorney General, because it's a matter of a simple construction of the meaning of the proposition itself. And that's always a matter for the chair, unless it raises some complex legal point which needs to be reflected upon by a law officer, and I don't think it does in these circumstances. But I take the point, and we have, I think we've reached a point of resolution on this particular issue. If you'd like to continue, Deputy.
I'm grateful, sir. So I think the issue that I have as a member is that the amendment is not explicit. It increases the closing balance of the fund, and the presumption, therefore, must mean that the increases in the upper earnings limit has to happen early in 2023 in order to effectuate those additional funds, which are being before the Assembly. So my point is that I just wanted to put beyond doubt that I would be addressing this amendment as an amendment that would be necessary to make an immediate change in 2023, i.e. from contributions from January in order to meet the budgetary allocations. And I thought that was, I wasn't clear about it because it wasn't explicit, but I think it's quite clear from your helpful guidance that is the case. And so I'm working on the basis that this is an upper ceilings increase that must happen as soon as practical, but within 2023. We've heard from the Social Security Minister about the fund, about the actuarial review of the fund. That is going to be important to make decisions about whether or not those early decisions made by this Assembly on the application of the then President of Social Security, former Senator Lesueur, were sufficient. I would repeat again that the Social Security Fund is unlike, I've heard actually that we are almost, it's not a pay-as-you-go fund, it's actually got a bigger fund than virtually anywhere else because this Assembly's been so far-sighted in the forecasting, in the foreseeing of an ageing population. And it's the contributory benefits. Because it's not a tax, because it doesn't take money, you get benefits from it, from pensions, from other benefits that you get. Now, those are for those are for sort of average income issues. If you want to put in higher rates of tax, which I know Reform brought forward as a manifesto commitment, then you would do that by effectively bringing in a higher rate of tax. What you can't do is you can't basically use a contributory fund to effectively raise a disproportionate amount when the purposes of, we've been through the HIF yesterday, but the whole purposes of the scheme are for raising money for the purposes in which it's set up to do, which is to pay pensions, which is to pay income support. Now, if you don't get a higher pension because you earn more money, it's a pension for everybody based upon your contributions. So I'm afraid this doesn't pass the test of what the purpose of the Social Security Fund arrangements are, and this Assembly will make further changes. Assembly has considered increases above the cap previously and accepted them, but this is a much bigger jump than ever. It's abolishing the upper earnings contribution. It isn't a carefully one, and I know previous governments have increased that, but that's been based upon evidence. It's also been based on consultation. When you are effectively taking money out of people's pockets, whoever they are, when you're requiring them to pay a contributory benefit, you should do so after due consultation based upon facts. We haven't got an actuarial review. We haven't consulted on it. And now, as I sought to raise in my rather uncomfortable, and sorry if I erred in standing orders, sir, at all, I apologise for that. I just wanted to make sure that I was absolutely clear that the fact is that this is a decision going to be made by the states without the actuarial review, and it looks as though, to me, from what I've heard, that it's going to have to happen straight away. And I just think that's all completely wrong. It fails all of our requirements to consult properly with persons that are affected. We're going to be coming on to talk about 21Es later. There's been a consultation within that limited group of people, which means that the council ministers can move forward with it. This is a wide spectrum of people who, as other members have said, have choices. And this would make us, and I wear my hat as the Financial Services Minister with Deputy Gorst, we would be extremely concerned on the competitiveness of this. These are, and again, Reform members may huff and puff, but I'm afraid to say that this is important. There is mobile business. The sun isn't shining out there in terms of the economy. It's far from shining. It's really difficult. We are, and wearing my external relations hat, I'm busy trying to get more business in Jersey, trying to get business from different jurisdictions in order to say that Jersey is a good place to do business with sound money, sound finance and stability. And so you just can't do this sort of thing. You just can't make decisions on the hoof like this to do it. It may well be a manifesto, a commitment of reform, which I totally respect, absolutely understand that they'd be doing it, but it's not government policy, not being consulted upon, and it will have a very competitively negative outturn from our ability to send out those clear messages of certainty, stability, sound finances, giving people due notice. All of these things fail in this proposition, every one of them. And it certainly will be difficult for the External Relations Minister and the Financial Services Minister to send out clear messages of stability and certainty. Deputy Mezek laughs. I don't. I'm doing it day in, day out, trying to get us in relation to trade deals and into the CTPPP trade deal, trying to get agreements extending the Japan Trade Services deal, the GCC Trade Services deal, favouring Jersey to get our economy in good shape so that we've got more money in our coffers, more people with higher paid jobs, paying taxes and contributing to our economy to improve all the things that we're here to improve. Economic growth is where you get the resources from to improve our public services. It's a strong economy that delivers that. Sending out messages of uncertainty, of not consulting, of just making decisions on the hoof is the wrong message. We've got a message and a reputation of stability, of certainty, sound money, sound decision-making, proper decision-making, consulting. So this fails all of those tests of doing it. I respect Reform's manifesto commitment, but this is not a tax. It's a contributory benefit. The money that comes into this goes into a scheme for the purposes of paying pensions and other benefits that you get because you contribute to them. And so simply shifting and saying that you're going to get all this additional money out with a decision of this state, which has not been made, that you're going to change the historic and agreed funding mechanisms for social security. We'd need to change all of that before we'd start turning it into a redistributive tax. So it's the wrong way to do it. So I'm sorry I've gone over my self-limited 10-minute speech limit, but I feel very strongly about this, though, that it fails all the tests of proper decision-making and proper ways of doing things. And frankly, since standing, now realising that this thing is going to have to come in the early part of 2023, that even horrifies me even more. So I urge members, with the greatest respect, we need to do a review of our long-term care scheme. We need to do a review of our HIF. We need to do a review, as the Minister has said, of the social security and long-term viability of that scheme. We know we've got an ageing society, already in a good place. Let's get on with that and not make decisions on the hoof, and let's bring this matter and this debate to a debate quickly, because we simply shouldn't and mustn't do this. And I urge members to send a very clear message. No, please do not vote for this amendment.
May I ask something of the Attorney-General, if that's okay?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It arises from something that the Deputy has said on more than one occasion when he referred to these as not being taxes. I seem to recall a previous Attorney-General providing helpful advice on that question in relation to the long-term care contribution in a previous debate, that being a contribution charged on taxable income collected alongside income tax by the tax department. So could the Attorney-General just clarify under the legal definition whether the long-term care contribution is in fact a tax?
Mr. Attorney, are you able to assist, or do you need some time to consider that?
So I will make some initial comments. If there are further questions, I would need more time. The advice previously given that I think that the Deputy is referring to concerning the long-term care scheme was in relation to a debate concerning the hospital and the borrowing limits in the previous iteration of the Public Finances Law, because that law had some borrowing limits, and those limits were relevant for the purposes of considering the borrowing for the purposes of building the hospital at that particular time. And the advice that, in fact, I gave concerning the long-term care scheme was that for the purposes of those particular limits in the then version of the Public Finances Law, that I considered that the long-term care scheme was effectively a tax, but that was for the purposes of the particular provisions of the borrowing limits in the previous version of the Public Finances Law. There is a difference between social security contributions and taxes. Social security contributions are charges, but for the purposes of the long-term care contributions, my advice in relation to that previous debate, the previous version of the Public Finances Law, was that I considered it was effectively a tax for the purposes of only of the then version of that law. Insofar as I have to consider whether it's a tax more generally for the purposes of this particular debate, I would need much more time to consider that.
So may I ask no further question of the Attorney General?
Supplemental, yes.
Can I just kindly ask the Attorney General if you can confirm that that long-term care charges cannot be a taxation draft as per the Public Finances Law, so couldn't be actually brought in if we go ahead with, if this amendment were to be passed, we cannot bring it into the into the finance law, which we were considering the legislation afterwards. I don't ask him to do that now, but just so that we're aware, I understand that it is, if he could just confirm that we couldn't change the Public Finances Law to change these things because it's not a tax in relation to a taxation draft. and so social security fall under a different law and couldn't therefore be used with the finance law before the states, which would have to be amended if this amendment went through, and it couldn't be brought in with the Act Operatoire and bring forward with immediate effect. Perhaps you could just consider that, and if we do pass this amendment, we would just be able to understand exactly what the legal effect and how this would be brought in legally. I'd be grateful if you could consider that.
Mr. Attorney, I'm sure you'd like a little bit of time to reflect on that. Were you clear on the questions?
Well, there were a lot of questions there, sir.
Yes, there were rather.
A lot of questions. Look, insofar as the question, I think there was one question concerning changing the public finances law. Clearly, yes, that could not be part of an act operatoire because the public finance, amending the public finances law is not to do with raising taxes. So clearly that could not form part of an act operatoire. In terms of income tax and I think social security, then that can form part of an act operatoire. Is that a sufficient answer for the Deputy? For the present?
I'm most grateful. Social security. I think the point is that social security contributions can't be done by way of that. But he's answered the question.
The Attorney's given his advice. Thank you very much.
It's great to read and clear.
Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I'm not quite sure how to follow that last speaker, but I will try and be succinct and quick. One of the points I wanted to raise and what actually caused me to turn on my light was, I think, the detail of the proposition that I think Deputy Joseph missed in some of his questioning when he tried to question the Treasury Minister and the Attorney General. What the wording of the proposition says is that actually it would be the estimates of the balance of the relevant funds that would be changed. Now, there are many estimates within the government plan, and we already know that many of those estimates are likely to be incorrect by the end of 2023 because of the volatility of the markets, the likelihood that some income may be increased into government. So I actually think that's somewhat of a red herring, and we shouldn't be swayed by that. The important part of the proposition is that we are agreeing that the caps should be scrapped. That is the political decision that we are making, and we shouldn't be swayed by rhetoric like that. I would also, I was quite surprised actually when the Social Security Minister talked about what, I don't think she used the words unfair, and I don't want to quote her incorrectly, but putting a burden on very few people. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and there are very many people who are paying the full rates of social security and long-term care contributions on very low salaries. I don't think that increasing the contributions for the people that we're talking about here is going to put them in any stretch of the imagination into financial strife. Whereas the Social Security Minister seems to think that it's okay that people that are earning far less, that are actually really struggling, should be paying a higher percentage of their incomes. Another point raised by an Assistant Minister, Deputy Ayer, he asked about whether Deputy Mezek could have taken the amendment in parts. Now, that's actually a conversation I had with Deputy Mezek as well. I sought clarification from Deputy Mezek as to why that couldn't be done. And it couldn't be done because of the way that the law is written, and the two are together within that law. So that is my understanding, is that it cannot be taken in parts. And I'll leave that to Deputy Mezek when he sums up to clarify it as well. I'd also like to say, I mean, just following on from the last speaker, I'm quite surprised that these questions are being asked by ministers of the Attorney-General at this point in time. Let's keep in mind that the Council of Ministers have had the opportunity to put in comments on this amendment. I would have thought that ministers would have sought any appropriate or necessary advice prior to putting in those comments. And to be quite honest, having these types of questions being asked at this stage in the game, I find very disappointing. I encourage members to support this amendment.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. Just briefly, the previous speaker, Deputy Joseph, said that the sun is not shining out there. I've got news for him. When interest rates go up, the sun in our financial sector starts to shine. It just peeks from behind the clouds, and actually we start making profits from our finance industry. So the sun actually has just started to shine out there, and we're likely to make money from that. And secondly, the member seemed to consider that somehow the current pension contributions paid for your actual individual pensions. Of course it doesn't. Your contributions today pay for other people's pensions today. That's the whole point of being in a large-scale scheme, to be able to manage that sort of benefits for our workforce. And I remind him that that's the case, and it's not an individual private pension, it's a collective pension, which is why it's there.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. I was extremely undecided coming into this debate because as someone who has been campaigning for inequality with Oxfam for many years, this proposal seems to sit very well with me and something that I wanted to support. But as I'm hearing the debate and heard the Social Security Minister, I have to actually take some consideration and step back on that and say, okay, well, in essence, and I absolutely support this proposal, but my concern is the timing. And also my concern is that we heard from the Minister about the review of the scheme that will be coming in 2023. And for me, I think that is when we should be looking at reviewing this kind of cap. And I will be pushing that as well within the review and within the areas that I can. And therefore, I would like to, I think I will not be supporting this proposal, but would like to put on record that I think that it's extremely important to look that there isn't a cap in the future, and that part of this review from the Social Security Minister looks into not capping, because it is about fairness, and it is really important that we do have more progressive taxes in the future. But I see that this will cause a lot of problems in 2023, and I think that this needs to be taken in a long-term process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. We don't get everything right in our island community, but sometimes we get things spectacularly right. And as Deputy Southern just reminded us, the way that we have organised the Social Security Fund is one of those things that we should be proud of. Because not only are current contributors paying for current benefit recipients, that's people receiving their old age pension, they are also putting money aside, depending on who they are, month by month or quarter by quarter or 6 month by 6 month, into the Social Security Fund, which stands now at over £2 billion. And so rather than, as Deputy Andrews is worrying about the fact that if there were no further contributions, or contributions were never raised in the future, we would, oh dear, we'd only have a fund that lasted us until 2067. I cannot think of very many countries or jurisdictions around the globe that can stand up and say they've got a reserve fund that could pay contributors and could pay benefit recipients, that's the old age pension, until 2067. So it's something that we should congratulate our predecessors. We don't take glory for it ourselves. It's our predecessors who made prudent decisions informed by the latest actuarial analysis of the fund. And the Minister has reminded us that she has an actuarial review, obviously is coming towards completion because it's due to be published in the second quarter of next year, and that will, my understanding is, be a publication date much quicker than previously, which will allow the Minister to make recommendations, if any are necessary, to this Assembly to ensure that that fund is sustainable and is at the appropriate level for the ageing population. Now, Deputy Mezek is quite right, and Deputy Ayer reminded us that he and his party in their manifesto have a commitment to remove the social security caps. And he is asking this Assembly as he reminded us, to simply today make that decision to remove the caps, and that's perfectly appropriate political decision for the Deputy to ask us to make. But I would suggest, sir, if we did just make that decision today, out with the actuarial review, out with the latest position on the fund, which we know is affected not only by interest rates but by bond rates, and they will have changed quite considerably because of the market conditions and the economic conditions that we find ourselves in. It's still going to be incredibly healthy, we know that. And the only argument that Deputy Mezek put to us for not waiting for that actuarial review was because it's such a vibrant fund that, of course, it's a sensible thing to put more money in it. That was, if I understand it, and he'll challenge me again later if that's not the case. But that argument, of course, runs counter to the independent economic advice that we get from the FPP, is that you shouldn't be taking more money out of the economy via tax and contributions at this time without good reason that you're going to spend that money on. And that's not what this amendment is all about. It is, as the wording says, and here I was a little bit surprised by Deputy Feltham, because normally it's the other way around. She's got a great eye for detail, but she, in her comments, was suggesting that because the funds are only estimated, and of course they can only be estimated at year end because they're impacted by market conditions, that we shouldn't consider what is written in black and white. In black and white, this amendment will require the Social Security Minister to return to this Assembly in very early order to remove the caps from both of those two funds so that those estimates, which will be estimates, so that we will have acted upon what this amendment in black and white tells ministers to do. So the other point I wanted to just pick up on from, or the other argument that Deputy Mezek made in relation to the long-term care fund. So we've got to remind ourselves, I've just been talking there about the pension fund. That's the fund that pays for Islanders' old age pension. But he also removes the cap from the long-term care fund. By convention, those two have always been held together. My understanding is that they don't need to be held together, but they have been done by convention. That by raising the cap on the long-term care fund, his number shows that it would increase contributions into the fund. I think it was by 6.5 million. And his argument there is that that would then put off the need for a rise in due course of the long-term care fund. The cap raises £6.5 million. So members might take the argument, well, that's not to be sniffed at. But 1% increase in the long-term care contribution raises £20 million. So even if we go back to the fund needs, the contribution level needs to raise in due course, and again, Social Security Minister does her actuarial reviews, and that informs any decision-making that is needed around the long-term care fund. But raising the cap does not mean that the contribution rate wouldn't need to be raised, because 1% raises £20 million. And the reality is that by taking the cap away, then you are changing what is the 20% tax rate, because the way that it's calculated and the way that it's charged through the taxation system, and you'll be doing that without any consultation at all, or waiting for the actuarial review. And I argue and believe very strongly, sir, that even if members do want to, in due course, raise that cap, just doing it off the back of amendment in the government plan without all of the appropriate consultation, because let's remind ourselves that we are seeking to enhance ourselves as a jurisdiction of substance. That means when businesses come here, we say to them, bring your very best people, but best people by very nature sometimes are higher earners, bring your very best people, and this is the certainty of the tax system that we provide. And by the way, any changes to our system that might impact you, we have proper consultation and legislative and governmental processes before we go through changes. And it's really important that we are able to maintain that as we seek to become and continue to be a jurisdiction of substance. And so I'm mindful of the clock. I really do ask members who, even in principle, might agree with the raising of the cap, that this approach is not the right approach to take. We should walk in the footsteps of our wise forefathers who made planned, appropriate and long-term decisions, and with the best will in the world, this can't be described as that. And I really do urge members not to support this amendment for all of those reasons that I've outlined. I suggest, sir, that rather than simply or ultimately raising money, it would send a shockwave through the business, because we're talking about businesses that are going to be paying this, not individuals. We're talking about so it's ever so slightly frustrating when the mover of the proposition shakes his head when it's quite clear that it's businesses that are paying this contribution on behalf of their employers, because that's how it's currently structured, unless he's proposing some other amendment as well. And I just would much rather, sir, propose that we wait for the Social Security Minister's review and make decisions in light of that with appropriate order. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'll try and be brief. I will let Deputy Mezek deal with the issue of business and so on. And hopefully, when he does that, there'll be more members in here to actually listen directly to what's being said. Because we've seemed to have had an exodus, particularly from the government, of people to actually listen to this argument, sir. And so it would be good so they can clear that up and we can make a debate, have a debate on what's actually going on. Let's talk about consultation. Let's consult with people and say, do you want to pay more tax? Funny enough, probably, or more charge, call it what you want. The answer will be from those few people probably, no, I don't want to. And that's fine. We'll consult, as we would do all the time. And not only will we consult on that, we will do that from a position, a review led by a minister who's the Social Security Minister, who made it clear that she simply does not agree with the principle of this. So a review led by a minister that does simply not agree with the principle of making this change is going to be a very, very open review, I'm sure. And yes, it's a manifesto place. We're elected on it. It's the right thing to do. And I would talk to those people who are concerning about saying, yeah, this is fair, this is fairness, paying the same tax rate. And those who are the very wealthiest on our island that have made the very most of the opportunities to make money on the island, we're asking to pay the same level of tax, of these two charges, call them what you will, as everybody else. And so that cap is removed. That is fairer, that is broader, that's a broad taxation system. Because if you don't do that, if you have a cap, the further you get away from that cap, the narrower that charge is. So what happens at broader? It seems to be we can have broader until it doesn't fit, and we have to protect those who that we want to protect from any sort of income increase, charge increase. That's the issue that we've got here, and it's not about jam tomorrow. I'm hoping the people who spoke here, it's not about jam tomorrow, is it? It's about fairness tomorrow. We want fairness, but we'll do it tomorrow. We heard this in the last government, didn't we? The last so-called very different government. We will reduce income inequality, but we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it at the right time. Now isn't the time. Now's never the time. It's fairness tomorrow. It's reducing income inequality tomorrow. And that's what we're seeing again, and that's what we're hearing again. So there is a principle here. And if you believe that the principle of fair taxation is an important one, of fair payments to our community is an important one, you have an opportunity to do this here. And this is revenue raising. This is us being fiscally prudent and saying, let's raise some revenue to pay for things long term. Now, we can give tax breaks, as we did the other day. We don't know how much the rent-a-room tax break will be because there's no calculation of it. We just said, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll just have an open check to do that. That is not responsible. Because there's no revenue raising to pay for that. That seems like a good idea. We'll do it. No safeguards, no protections. Don't worry about that. No standards. But we'll do it anyway, and we'll spend that money. And then as soon as we bring something that was an election promise, it was talked about on the doorstep, that we were elected on, this assembly, or some of it anyway, seems to immediately object and come up with the same sort of officer-written arguments that we've heard so many times before. Same officers don't want the same things, and the ministers will bring that to the assembly. This is not a changing assembly when we do that. This is exactly the same. This is more of the same assembly as last time, that will object to things not because they want to keep to their principles, but because they can't listen to the convoluted, disjointed arguments and the fear-mongering. And I say this, there's more to Jersey living here than simply those people who want to drain us of cash. It's a beautiful place. We've seen our community recently. That's why it's a wonderful place to be. That's what attracts people to stay here. The safety and so many other elements. And those people who are running companies here, and I'll let Deputy Mezek deal with the business issue because I know how annoyed he is by it, and I would urge him to stay calm and give the argument clearly. But the fear-mongering that everybody's going to leave and go to another jurisdiction, where? Where will they get a better tax break than in Jersey? Where will they get a safer community than in Jersey? Where will they get better links to Europe than in Jersey? Where will they get better links to the UK than in Jersey? Where will they get better healthcare than in Jersey that they don't have to pay for through the nose? So stop doing Jersey down when you have these arguments. So this is an opportunity for you to put that fairness at the forefront of what we're talking about, and I urge members to take that opportunity this time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Doublé.
So I'm really struggling with this one. I think I have very similar thoughts on it to Deputy Jean, and the inequality really concerns me. And in principle, and I have stated this in manifestos in the past, I don't agree with regressive taxation methods, and I do think we should be moving towards progressive taxation. I don't think I can't vote against this because my principles align with it. Yeah, I'm really struggling to be able to vote for it because of some of the arguments laid out. And I really do not like abstaining, sir, but at the moment I feel like that's my only option. But I am going to listen to the summing up speech. I did just want to let members know what my thinking was on this. And I think if this isn't approved, I really do want to see the government discussing this. And I want to see evidence that it will be discussed and considered. And I think it will be. I do have confidence that it will be, even if it doesn't pass. And I think even if it doesn't pass, I thank the proposer for bringing this, because I think it's a really important principle that again, I do agree with it, and I want to see it in future.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No other member wishes to speak? And I close the debate and call upon Deputy Mezek to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to start by trying to convince Deputy Jean and Deputy Doublé to vote for this. And I'll try to put it in as simple terms as I possibly can, which is that if you don't vote for it, it doesn't happen. And it is as simple as that. This Assembly will have to vote for this change to happen if we want it to happen. And if you do want it to happen and you don't vote for it, you can't be surprised when it doesn't happen. Deputy Jean spoke about the timing of this being her reason to not vote for it. Well, the time doesn't come if you don't vote for it. And I've got something to break to her, which is that the review that is coming, it's not going to conclude that it wants to get rid of the cap, and we've got the evidence of that before us. That evidence is Deputy Joseph, Deputy Miller, and Deputy Gorst. They don't agree with the principle of this. They're not going to propose it. The only way that their view can be overridden is with a democratic majority in this Assembly saying, that's your view, but ours is different. We do want to go ahead with it. And so it can only be achieved by voting in favour of it, and waiting for it another day, I'm sorry to say, is futile, because those in charge of that review are against it on principle. So to vote with them, you are voting with people whose principles are different to yours, and I personally don't recommend that. And speaking of difference of principles, sir, I want to have on record as clear as I possibly can that the definition of fairness that I work on is not the same definition that the Minister for Social Security works on. She said, in opposition to this amendment, she said, fairness cuts both ways. I honestly want to hear from somebody explain to me why it's fair that we have this system, which is discriminatory. It says to people who earn a very, very large amount of money that they will get preferential tax rates above what the rest of us get. That is not fair. Fairness is playing by the same rules. And right now we have one set of rules for those people and a different set of rules for the rest of us. That is not fair. I think what I'm asking for here is a level playing field. Who can possibly challenge that on fairness grounds? But the point that annoyed me the most in this debate, and Deputy Gorst referred to my consternation when he made this point about the social security element of this amendment only applying to businesses, is what they said. And it annoys me, sir, because I believe that statement, if it's said without caveat, is misleading. So to the majority of people out there running businesses, this amendment will have no effect on them whatsoever. It will not include a single extra penny of spend for them to do businesses. This only and exclusively applies to businesses who employ people on salaries of above £277,000 a year. That is a small minority of businesses, and the ones most likely to be paying those sorts of amounts are those in those high-value sectors which are currently benefiting from the interest rates going up. Those businesses who right now will actually be seeing their profits go up, hopefully. And so they're the ones who are most able to afford it. So your small business person who runs a small venture with a, perhaps small shop floor on the high street or something like that, won't pay a penny extra. So let's not say that this is something that only applies to businesses. It only applies to a small minority of businesses, and it's the ones who are doing the best. There were points made about competitiveness. That's one that I always find particularly grating, sir, because Jersey is my home. I was born here, and I love this island with all my heart. And I simply don't believe that our headline tax rates are what makes this island and this community. We are so much more than that. And I don't believe that if you said to those doing the best in Jersey financially, we'd like to ask you to pay the same rates as the rest of us, not more, just the same rates as the rest of us, that they'll all pack their bags and leave. One of the reasons I don't believe that, sir, is because if that were true, they wouldn't be here in the first place, because there are already places we can go to that have lower taxation regimes. In fact, some of those, sir, you can see on a clear day. They pay less if they went to Guernsey. In fact, they pay almost nothing if they went to Sark. But I would say you get what you pay for. And in our island, we pay tax so that we can have some of the nicer things here. We can provide better services, we can have better infrastructure, and that benefits everyone. Those who do business here know that if we have more revenue going into our health system and our education systems, they're going to get healthier employees, better educated employees, and higher productivity as a result of that. So they'll reap the rewards that way. So Deputy Iyer pointed out that this amendment is identical to one that I've brought previously. The one I brought previously, Deputy Iyer voted in favour of, so I hope his voting will be identical this time round, since the amendment is. But he did raise this question about splitting it in parts, so Social Security and LTC can be considered separately. That can't happen. The cap exists in law in one place. It is one cap. They're not two separate caps. You get rid of one, you automatically get rid of it for the other. I personally don't see how that is problematic. And to be honest, I think that's probably all I've got to say. This is a matter of principle. The actuarial review going on is a red herring, because that's not what we're waiting on to tell us the answer to this, and we know that for political reasons. This point of competitiveness I regard as being an unpatriotic argument, and there is no time like the present, and if we want to see this happen, we have to vote for it, and if you don't vote for it, don't expect it to happen. But if it doesn't go through, I would also say don't expect us to stop bringing it up. We will keep bringing it up until it is achieved, because it's an inherent unfairness in our system, and unfairness cannot prevail, and one day I'm confident it won't. So I make the amendment, sir, and I call for the appel.
As called for, I invite members to return to their seats. If members have returned to their seats, I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on Amendment 23. And I ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been rejected. 16 votes pour, 28 votes contre, 1 abstention.
Those voting for the Connotabs of St Helier, St Lawrence, St Brelard and Trinity, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Doublé, Ward, Alves, Mezek, Coles, Porre, Curtis, Faltham, Kovac and Andrews, and the Connotab of St Martin abstained.
Is the adjournment
Sir, can I
proposed?
propose the adjournment, please?
Adjournment is proposed. The States will come back at 2 o'clock.